At 6. I will now call to order the regularly scheduled board meeting for the Mount Diablo Unified School District for June 9th, 2021. And we're going to start with having trustee Alaus make a statement for us.
Hola a todos, si necesitan traducción en español, ahí hay una muchacha que tiene el equipo para traducir en vivo. Entonces, si necesitan eso, ahí lo está ofreciendo ella. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. We will go to roll call. Trustee Alaus,
Here.
trustee Mayo,
Here.
trustee McPherson,
Here.
trustee Nzewi,
Here.
trustee Mason's here. Let the record show that trustee Count is absent tonight. Will you please join me as we pledge the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will now review and potentially approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. Are there any changes? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam President, I would move that the board approve the agenda as presented, subject to necessary changes by the chair.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by trustee Nzewi. Okay. Trustee Nzewi, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee McPherson,
Yes.
trustee Mayo?
Yes,
I vote yes, so that passes on a vote. But oh, trustee Alas,
Yes.
I'm going to start on that side for the rest of the night. Forewarned. Okay, report out from our closed session. The board received under 7.1, the board received information about negotiations. Under 7.2, in closed session by a vote of 4-0 with trustee Count being absent, the board took action to non-elect employee ID number 43817, a probationary 1 teacher effective June 30th, 2021. The board also voted on a 3-0 vote with trustee Count being absent and trustee McPherson recusing herself to release and reassign employee 33970 from a vice principal position to a classroom teacher position. And the ID number is 31535. And also to, no, I said it was double there, from a vice principal to a classroom teacher. Okay, and also to approve a settlement agreement for employee number 38940. And then under 7.3, the board voted on a 4.0 vote with trustee Count being absent to recommend the readmission of student 88.20 who has completed the readmission process and readmission assignments.
Okay. Madam President, just want to bring you back to item 7.2. Although you did announce the reassignment of the vice principal, we did not announce the reassignment of the principal.
From principal to assistant principal effective June 30th, 2021.
Great. And then just wanted to make sure with the employee numbers.
That's number 31535.
31535, and then the previous one.
And the previous 33970. And that was from vice principal to classroom teacher.
Correct. All right, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we are at public comment. Kip Penovich.
This was actually going to be my public comment last time, but I wanted to go with my other one. I felt it was more pertinent. I'm going to begin with the story. When I came from back to the district from Clayton Valley, and while I was there, I served as the teachers union president. And I remember when we first started, it took us a couple of years to get going. And I remember commenting to a friend once about, it doesn't seem like people are like super excited about our, the teachers and he's like, oh no, they're good. But wait till you ask for money. Then it's going to change. And sure enough, it did. The moment we got into negotiations and we asked for increases in pay, we were vilified, lazy, you get summers off. They're standard comments. And I reflected back on that as I've reflected on this year. Hopefully it's one that we will not repeat. But in a form of that, I felt a little of that when it hit the fan early, we were great. You guys are working hard. But when it came time to, well, let's just bring everybody back, hold on. We want to be sure it's safe. We want to be sure that everybody's comfortable coming back. We want to be sure there's a good schedule. It's like, okay, you guys are dragging your feet. It all went back to, you don't want to do your job. You want to stay home. You do your best to ignore it. And you trudge on. But what really kind of set me off was when we were finally able to get an agreement to come back, that the big announcement, the title was "We're Back." And I remember my first thought was, and I don't know how many teachers I have out in the audience, I never left. And this year has been kind of one of the most exhausting, mentally, psychologically, and that bleeds over into physicality as well. It's been a grind the entire year. And I hope that, in moving forward, that there would be better acknowledgement of what we do in the classroom. It has not been easy. And I know, after the fact, I think everybody will go back to being rose-colored glasses. I don't go there. I try and remember what happened during the time, because I think that's when people really show what they feel about what you do. So I will hope for support moving forward. But it's been a heck of a year. And as I said, hopefully we're not going to repeat it. So thank you.
Thank you. And next speaker would be Nancy Wolf, and this is for public comment. Is that correct?
Good evening. I'm here because I'm concerned about my grandkids. And when we teach people, like if we're teaching math, we expect our children to use it, right? Anything that we teach them, we want it to be a part of their life. Well, the critical race theory is teaching hatred. And I'm very concerned that maybe you folks have not read through any of that material. All cultures are good, all colors are good. And I'm just horrified to read some of this information. So not only is that a problem with me, but I have seen the sex education with the stick figures, little stick cartoons with all the different positions. Can't we just go back to teaching about our body? I mean, this is inappropriate for little children. Now, I saw this on my 7-year-old grandchild's paperwork. And I don't know if you've looked at any of this. It's completely inappropriate for little children. And I am just here to let you know how I feel about it. I think people in the community need to let you know how we're feeling. And so that's it. Thank you very much for giving me time.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any district communications? Okay, next would be 10.0, recognition of student board member. I believe Dr. Clark's going to start this off.
Yes, tonight we want to recognize our student board member. And, I was sharing with her during our weekly meeting this week that, less than a year ago, when, when I first entered the district, was, I believe, my very first meeting, she was presenting about this position. And I was sharing with her that I can't believe how that simple act turned into such a rich experience that we've all been very fortunate to have with her representing the students of the Mount Diablo Unified School District as our first trustee. And so I know that next week, or at our next meeting, is going to be our last meeting. And I wanted to make sure that we gave her a proper recognition, and it wasn't something that was rushed at our last meeting. So so this is an opportunity that we have to recognize her and to thank her for her service, and for us to embarrass her a little bit with with accolades. And so so again, I cannot thank her enough for her determination and for all that she has brought to this position. This is not a student who takes any of her duties lightly. I have five board members, and I share with folks now that I have 6 board members who I have, and I'm very proud to work with her as a governance partner in this very important work that we're doing. And so so just as superintendent, I really want to thank Trustee Alas for her service to this board and to the community, and for what you represent to all those young people who are looking up to you and looking at what you do and what you've accomplished this year. So just, I thank you on behalf of the staff and for the community of the work that you do. So I do have a brief statement from President Cound,
Okay,
if I may.
you may.
I'll spare going up to the podium this week, but recognition for student board member. I'm very sorry to miss this board meeting. I will watch the video afterwards to view key items, including the budget, LCAP, and technology presentations. But I'm especially sad to miss the recognition of our student board member, to be able to celebrate Michelle Alas in person. Ms. Alas, I want to thank you for your thoughtful persistence in the creation of this student board position, for your careful preparation of questions for every board meeting, for your initiative to bring a range of student voices to the table through our Student Advisory Committee, and for your excellent model of what this position should look like going forward. Your leadership is a model not only for future students who will hold this position, but also for all of us elected school board members. It reminds us all to do our homework and be prepared for every board meeting, to look at every decision through an equity lens of what is best for all students, and to take the initiative to seek out perspectives that are not at the table. Our district is so fortunate to have had you as the inaugural student board member. Thank you, President Sharice Cound.
And I would just like to add, you're a very brave young lady to take it on and be the first and pave the way for the others that will follow you. And I'm sorry for them, you have set the bar very, very high, but it's been good because they've been able to really get a chance to watch you, see what the expectations are. And I'm sure you'll be there as a mentor if they need to call you and ask you for help. But yeah, it's been a pleasure to serve with you. We are here because of you and every other student like you. So it's imperative that we have the student voice at our meetings. And we used to have reps come, but to have it consistently and in such a professional manner has really, really been an asset in the troubling year. So thank you. And any other board members that would like to?
I would like to acknowledge your integrity and your manner in which you have presented yourself, and how inclusionary you are of adults and your peers. I think that has been a valuable asset. And I appreciate the depth of your questions, because they've added a new layer to our board work as we're reviewing the agenda items. So thank you very much.
Trustee Alas, I really want to thank you. This is an incredibly difficult position. It's not 2 meetings a month and limited to that. Your efforts go way beyond that, and you're involved in so many ways. You've done such an exceptional job of bringing the student voice to this forum. I really appreciate that you've been bringing in so many voices and amplifying so many voices and including so many people and bringing everyone in. And I agree with Trustee Mayo. You ask excellent questions, and I really appreciate that you do that. And you do it with so much kind of dignity and diplomacy and grace. And I just want to acknowledge that this is a challenging position, I think, for anyone, and especially a young person. And I'm so excited about kind of what you've already accomplished and what you're going to accomplish in the future. And so I really just thank you for serving here.
You get a Keisha special, it's typed, of course. Yeah. So, Michelle, I don't know if the world is ready. It's no secret you are smart and kind and compassionate. You have a strong sense of justice and not standing back and just letting things happen, but rather making it all your business. More than that, you do everything you can to make it everyone else's business too. You make sure other young people know what's going on and spur them to action as appropriate. You said there ought to be a school board member and you made it happen. You're leaving quite the legacy. But as your time to depart has drawn near, I've heard people say, man, those are going to be some hard shoes to fill. But I think you would agree there's only one Michelle Alas, and whoever succeeds you should not try to be you. They should come as their authentic selves and shine in their own way. I honestly think that's the legacy that you'll leave behind. I'm so glad I got to serve with you for these past few months, and I'm so proud of you, and I can't wait to see what's the next barrier you make tumble down.
Thank you so much, everybody, for your incredibly kind words. Serving with you has been an honor and has been definitely a challenge. I've learned more about myself and about my community than I ever thought I would. I have been very fortunate to be able to represent my peers in this way and be able to contribute to these decisions. And in the creation of this position, I want to make sure that this is something that lasted for the rest of MDUSD history, so that there is always a student voice at the table when there are decisions about our health and our learning. So thank you for this experience. I look forward to this penultimate meeting and our final meeting together. Thank you so much.
Okay, moving on. 10.2, review and potential approval of Board Resolution 20/21-76 to authorize the award of summer contracts. Dr. Clark.
Yeah, so this is kind of strange because I'm going to present a resolution that gives me authority here. So resolution 20/21-76. Whereas timely award of various contracts is required to permit critical summer work, and whereas the current schedule of school board meetings will result in delays in awarding bids or purchase orders, and whereas the completion of planned work is essential to fulfilling the commitments of the Maintenance and Operations Department to allow for the completion of essential major maintenance projects and the procurement of essential goods and services. So now therefore be it resolved and ordered that the governing board of the Mount Diablo Unified School District delegates its authority to the superintendent and or his designee to make sure awards pursuant to section 17604 of the California Education Code from the period from June 23rd, 2021 to August 11th, 2021. However, no contract made pursuant to the delegation and authorization shall be valid or constitute an enforceable obligation against the district unless and until the same shall have been approved or ratified by the governing board. The approval or ratification to be evidenced by a motion of the board duly passed and adopted. So in layman's terms, although I have the authority to approve contracts in your absence, those contracts will still come back to this board for ultimate approval. But just to keep us on timelines and to keep the process moving along, this resolution is asking the board to give me that authority during the times that we don't have meetings.
Any questions of the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam President, I would move that the board adopt Resolution 2021, number 76, authorization to award summer contracts as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Trustee Alas,
Yes.
trustee Mayo,
Yes,
trustee McFerrin,
Yes.
trustee Anzali.
Yes.
I vote yes, so that passes. 5 with concurrence from, it's 4 concurrence from board meeting and 1 absent. Okay. Next, review potential approval of resolution 20/21-75 authorizing energy service contract for HVAC upgrades to Northgate High School.
So I have this item. I don't know if staff wants to present on this item. No, just if there's any questions, we brought this forward at the last meeting. So now we're looking for approval. If you have questions, staff is here to respond.
Okay. Any questions? Or not, I'll entertain a motion.
I motion to approve resolution 20/21-75 authorizing energy service contract for HVAC upgrades for Northgate High School.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Trustee Alas,
Yes.
trustee Mayo,
yes,
trustee McFerrin,
Yes.
trustee Anzali.
Yes.
Trustee Mason votes yes, 4-0 with concurrence for our student. Okay. Next, public employee appointments. Dr. Clark or Dr. Rubio?
Yeah, well, we're gonna actually call on Dr. Scudero to
Okay.
present these, but so I'm gonna turn over 11.1 and 11.5 to Dr. Scudero.
Good evening. It's our pleasure to bring for your review and potential approval the appointment of Brian Patterson as Assistant Buildings and Ground Manager with the Maintenance and Operations Department. Brian joined MDUSD in 1999 as a part of the Landscape Department. He and his wife have 2 children, a son and a daughter who just completed her sophomore year at Northgate High School. Not only is Brian a reliable member of the Maintenance and Operations team, but he is also a pastor in the Bay Area. Fortunately, Brian's not with us this evening. I'd like to turn it over to the board for approval.
Thank you.
Madam President, I would move that the board approve the appointment of Brian Patterson to the classified management position, Assistant Grounds Manager.
Second.
Thank you. Trustee Alas,
Yes.
trustee Mayo,
Yes,
trustee McFerrin.
Yes.
Trustee Anzali.
Yes.
Trustee Mayo Mason votes yes, 4-0 concurrence from our student. All right. Next is
11.2, I'd like to call Deborah Robertson and her family, come on up. While they do, I'm going to read to you a little bit about Deborah. It's our pleasure to bring for your approval and review the appointment of Deborah Robertson as the Area Facility Manager in the Maintenance and Operations Department. Deborah was born and raised in Concord, California, and attended Westwood Elementary, El Dorado Middle School, and graduated from Concord High School. For the past 3 years, she has worked for MDUSD as an equipment operator. Deborah was blessed to have fallen in love with a soul partner and her 2 daughters over 10 years ago. She loves to cook, camp, golf, and play softball. Her absolute favorite thing to do is to spend time with her family and friends. I'd like to bring this for your approval.
Thank you.
Madam President, I would move that the board approve the appointment of Deborah Robertson as a DMA classified management position and area facility manager.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Trustee Alas,
Yes.
trustee Mayo,
Yes,
trustee McFerrin,
Yes.
trustee Anzali.
Yes.
Trustee Mason votes yes. Would you like to say anything?
Yeah, we'd like to hear from her.
Thank you, Dr. Clark and members of the board for giving me this opportunity. I look forward to serving you.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
This is my wife, Tiffany. my oldest daughter Jenny and my youngest daughter Allison.
Thank you.
And I'd like to call up Mark Ramirez. And while Mark's coming up, we're bringing for your review and potential approval, the appointment of Mark Ramirez as Warehouse and Distribution Operations Manager in the Food and Nutrition Services Department. Mark's professional background spans nearly 20 years in warehouse-related work. Mark has worked with some large companies, including PetSmart, Amazon, and Peloton. Mark has 6 beautiful children, 5 boys and 1 daughter. He also has 2 grandchildren. Right now, all of Mark's attention is focused on the big day as he is getting married on July 17th.
Oh,
So we bring this to your matter for your approval.
all righty.
Madam President, I would move that the board approve the appointment of the Food and Nutrition Services Warehouse Distribution Operations Manager in the name of Mark Ramirez.
Second,
Trustee Alas,
yes.
trustee Mayo,
Yes,
trustee McFerrin,
Yes.
trustee Anzali.
Yes.
Trustee Mason votes yes. Mark, would you like to say something?
Wait a minute, did we say Peloton? Oh, okay. Okay. Just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly. So the floor is yours, sir. Sorry.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's great to come back to Mount Diablo School District where I graduated from and look forward to serving you guys.
Thank you and welcome.
And I'd like to call up Megan Gertz. And while Megan comes up, we'd like to bring for your review and potential approval, the appointment of Megan Gertz as the new curriculum specialist in the Educational Service Department here in the district office. Megan is a graduate of Mount Diablo Unified School District. After graduating from MDUSD, she attended Cal Poly and earned a Bachelor's of Science in Biochemistry and a minor in Psychology. She earned a multiple subject teaching credential from Cal State East Bay. And she worked at Monty Gardens, right next door, right here, actually, for 11 years at various grade levels. And during that time, also earned her master's degree in education from Touro University with a focus on educational technology. Bring for your approval, Megan Gertz.
Thank you.
I'll move to approve Megan Gertz as the curriculum specialist in the Educational Services Department at the district office.
second,
Okay, trustee Alas,
Yes.
trustee Mayo,
yes,
trustee McFerrin,
Yes.
trustee Anzali.
Yes.
Trustee Mason votes yes, and congratulations. And apparently, we're graduating a lot of talented people. That's what all I gotta say. So come on up if you'd like to say something.
I'd just like to thank you for this opportunity, and it's, I love working in the district that I went to school in, and I feel like it's the way I can give back to so many, well, not many people are here still, but to be able to serve students and just all the people that work for our district. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I just want to make sure you, Jonathan, come on, Jonathan. It's hard for me to recognize everybody with their masks on. As Jonathan Pike comes up, we'd like to bring for your review and potential approval, the appointment of Jonathan Pike as principal to Ignacio Valley High School. Jonathan has served in education for over 17 years. He has a Bachelor of Science from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in environmental horticulture, a master's in agricultural education, and a master's from National University in educational administration. John additionally served as a lieutenant colonel in the California Army National Guard with over 22 years of service. Jonathan is married to his wife, Marcia, who is an elementary teacher at Pleasant Hill Elementary. He has 3 children, Morgan, Kaylor, and Sidoni. That's it, right? All right. He resides with his family in Pacheco after recently moving from Canterbury Village near Concord. We bring this to your matter for your approval.
Thank you.
Madam President, I would move the board approve the appointment of Jonathan Pike to principal at Ignacio Valley High School.
Second.
Trustee Alas,
Yes.
trustee Mayo,
Yes,
trustee McFerrin,
Yes.
trustee Anzali.
Yes.
Trustee Mason votes yes. Would you like to say anything?
Trustees, thank you. Dr. Clark, thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. Be selected for this position. I am looking forward to so many great things to come to Ignacio Valley. Not only as serving as a site leader, but also as a community member to be able to serve my own very own community that I live in. So again, I thank you for believing in my leadership, and I look forward to all the great things. So thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. Okay, that takes us to 12.1, staff presentation on equitable access to technology for students and staff through one-to-one programs. Dr. Clark.
Yes, we're excited to bring this presentation forward tonight as we were forced into distance learning due to the pandemic. It opened up opportunities for us to do different things. You guys can come sit, to come and do different things with technology and our devices and whatnot. And so the team has put together a presentation this evening. We want to make sure that we're keeping the board and the public up to date on our plans and our process. Yes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the tech team, and Dr. Gonzalez is going to lead us off.
Yeah, I'll kick this off, and then I'm gonna let the real experts in the room take over. So I remember when we were here about a year ago, and we said that we were looking for a unicorn. And I'm pleased to say that we found a unicorn in our Director of Technology and Innovation, because the work that he's done this year, certainly with the constant support of Megan Gertz, who's moving into a new role with us this evening, couldn't be happier with not only the one-to-one program that they're going to be rolling out tonight, but the draft of the technology plan as well. So with that, I'm going to let them go ahead and take over and just say that it's been a pleasure to watch them really push the boundaries of creativity and innovation and move our district someplace that we really need to go. And their plan to do it quickly is certainly going to get us there. So team, you're on.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez and Dr. Clark. Appreciate that introduction. I will be pleased to let my 14-year-old daughter know that I was introduced as a unicorn in a public meeting. I'm not sure I can quite live up to that, but she'll be happy to know that. I'd also like to obviously introduce Megan Gertz, who, of course, our presentation is now incorrect. She is no longer technology TOSA, but curriculum specialist, and we're rewarding her tonight for her efforts with 2 board presentations to do. Also, I'd just like to also recognize the work of Jen Sachs and Samantha Allen, of course, in this work around equity for technology and our one-to-one program that we're going to be talking about tonight. So basically, I think what you'll see tonight, it's been sort of abundantly clear from distance learning that our students need us to have a strategy to maintain the equity that we have been able to provide, obviously in an emergency situation through distance learning. And this is really what we're going to be presenting you tonight. So obviously this sort of initially looks like a one-to-one program. But really, this is about equitable access to technology for our students. And I think that's really the key here that I want you to to take away from this presentation. This is just a presentation for information at this point. We do not have all of the details. So pretty clearly, there's a lot of, this is going to be at a fairly high level for you tonight. We will have much more detail over the course of the summer. We've been working with principals, with staff in the district office to make sure that we've got all of this kind of squared away. And we'll be continuing to update you as we progress with that. So without further ado, just a little background history, which you're all abundantly aware of, but just for the sake of presenting where we've come from with this, we basically have issued about 17,000 Chromebooks to our families, to our students, which occurred in March, and then again in July and August of this past year to enable us to provide distance learning opportunities to our students. That was obviously a huge effort for our schools, for our technicians, and we, I think, have been pretty successful. We're pretty successful at doing that. Obviously, a lot of hiccups in doing so, and in the emergency situation in which we found ourselves, I think overall we did a pretty good job with that. I'd like to pass it off to Megan to talk about the learning platforms piece.
And as you guys know, probably, many of our teachers prior to March of 2020 had been using Google Classroom and Seesaw. But once March of 2020 hit, then everybody was forced into using some sort of platform that allowed them to give their students work, give their students access to curriculum, and be able to receive work back and give feedback. So once March of 2020 hit, everybody was using 3rd through 12th grade was using Google Classroom, and TK2 was using Seesaw. So that was a challenge. There was a lot of training involved, but teachers did an amazing job of learning on the fly. And our coaches did a lot of training and gave opportunities for people to come learn what they wanted to learn. We also had many vendors that offered things for free. And so there were a lot of opportunities for students and for teachers to use tools that they perhaps hadn't ever used or hadn't had the opportunity to use. So some of those will be continuing, and then some of them are no longer free. So we may not be using them. But we also issued, as you know, many students don't have access to Wi-Fi at home. So we also issued 1,600 hotspots. And so students had access, they were able to use their district issued Chromebook and the hotspot to get access.
All right. So moving along. Continuing equitable access for students. As I mentioned before, one-to-one is an equity initiative, an equity initiative, not a technology initiative. It is through technology, but it is not about technology. And so I think that's really important to that we keep that in mind as we progress through this kind of or into this new world of a sort of a post-pandemic, post-emergency situation where we now find ourselves with a new normal, and we get a chance to create that here with this kind of program, with the opportunities that we have. I wanted to just define for you the difference between a one-to-one program and a one-to-one ratio at our schools. Many of our schools prior to the pandemic had achieved a one-to-one ratio of technology, meaning one device per student at least. That is not a one-to-one program per se. That it enables a lot of technology use in our schools. The difference with a true one-to-one program is that a one-to-one program is a whole school in which every student and teacher is issued a device for their use 24/7 throughout the school year. And I think that's a very important distinction because we gain a lot of advantages, especially from an equity lens, from making sure that our students have that kind of access to technology, not just in the classroom, not just led by teachers, not just in a situation that is within the four walls of the classroom. So why one-to-one? I'll turn that over to Megan.
So looking at our graduate profile, which is available on our district website, this was adopted in 2014 and is actually a very fabulous document that gives kind of the skills and what do we want our graduates to look like. And it's very relevant today. And this one-to-one program will help us to achieve students who are college and career ready. And looking through all of the different opportunities that we have with one-to-one, things like reclaiming instructional minutes seem like a small thing, but if you think about the amount of time spent putting Chromebooks in a cart, pulling them out of the cart, it's 10, 15 minutes, perhaps every single class period. So if we start looking at that and looking at how much more time teachers would have with students actually instructing, it will just be more, it was more instructional minutes. The engagement pieces, there's lots of research around engagement, higher levels of engagement. Allowing teachers, now that if we have one device in the classroom versus, Chromebooks that I got off DonorsChoose 2 years ago, and, Chromebooks that are on their way out, having one device will allow us to more easily use them to amplify instruction. So teachers will spend less time trying to deal with the technology and actually have time to teach and use the tools that they can use on a Chromebook with their students.
All right, so let's talk a little bit, and we're going to keep this relatively high level. Obviously, we'll take questions at the end of the presentation, but we'll keep this fairly high level at the moment. As I mentioned, we're working on the details of this, but we just wanted to make sure that you had some information about kind of where we're at right now and what our approach is. So in terms of scope, we have 16,000 Chromebooks. Actually, it says here on order, they are actually currently with a vendor. So we have those right now. These are not actually any longer subject to the current supply chain issues. We actually have these devices available to us now. Our plan is this, and we have talked with the help of Samantha Allen, who we appreciate her help with this. We talked to our secondary school administrators actually yesterday, I believe, about this and got their feedback and input. And the plan here is to launch these initially, the one-to-one programs in our secondary schools, so middle schools and high schools. We feel those schools are ready for this work. Many of those, especially our middle schools, have already achieved a one-to-one ratio in the past. And so they have some experience with systemic technology in their classrooms. Teachers are, especially at the middle school level, I think very ready for this kind of work. I know a lot of work has been done over the years with folks like Megan, working with teachers, coaching teachers, providing structures for teaching and learning with technology. And a lot of those have been very successful and very well received. We are looking at elementary schools as currently trying to achieve a one-to-one ratio, and that may be through reallocating certain devices from our secondary schools, existing devices, to those schools, so that they can take advantage of devices that we have available. We would be issuing the 16,000 devices to our secondary schools. These will be one-to-one ready devices, meaning that they will have cases. They will have, they'll be issued directly to the sites and available for checking out to students immediately. There are some technical pieces behind the scenes that I won't go into that require us to do some different things on the management side of things than we do with traditional devices in classrooms. So that's a consideration as well. With our elementary schools, in addition to working to achieve a one-to-one ratio, we're also looking to basically, to be blunt, explore what one-to-one can look like in our elementary schools. We obviously don't want to be in a position on August 12th of saying, incoming kindergartner here, have your Chromebook and off you go. We don't want to do that. We don't think that's the right approach from day one. What we do think is the right approach is to identify places where good practices can be experimented with, explored, and then scaled as possible in our elementary schools to determine really what's going to be successful and what's going to be in the best interest of our kids. So that will be looking at those through the course of this next school year, with the idea that we would potentially scale those programs as necessary and as possible in the following school year. Teacher laptops, as I think you're aware, we have a large number of teacher laptops on order. Unfortunately, those are currently still subject to a lot of the supply chain issues. We are hopeful those will be in soon. I think they're probably still some weeks or potentially months out. Unfortunately, it's just the nature of the industry right now that we're all subject to. If you've tried to buy a new car lately, it's pretty difficult because the chip issue is impacting even the auto industry because it's all computers in there now. So it's a worldwide issue that we are unfortunately subject to the restrictions of. What I will say about that is that it's important in our one-to-one schools to make sure that our teachers are prepared with modern devices that are able to be used in a one-to-one environment. And so we will be, the proposal here is to prioritize those initial devices for our secondary teachers in one-to-one programs. The other thing is we have heard, as I'm sure you have as well, from a number of our groups of staff that have some really pretty desperate needs. I won't list them because I've heard from many, but I think it's really important that we make sure that we are taking care of them as well. And we will build that into our plans. These are certain itinerant groups of certified staff in particular that are moving from site to site and don't always have access to the same site funding that other teachers may have, that other certified staff may have. All right, opportunities and challenges. Obviously, a lot of different possibilities here, and a number of challenges that I think we all need to be aware of. I think many of us are well aware of the challenges that we've had as a district related to technology, and so those don't go away overnight. So I want to make sure that we're thinking about that, and in the subsequent presentation later tonight, we'll talk about that in a little more depth in our technology plan presentation. Our technology plan implementation, even though we're still, obviously, we don't have a board approved technology plan, we're obviously not just sitting waiting for that to happen. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes right now, such as increasing our internet bandwidth to our schools to make sure we have that capacity available to students. We know that will increase, the demand will increase next year. We are working on a substantial number of core data center and infrastructure improvements in preparation for improving our overall network infrastructure in our schools, which is a much larger project that's going to take some time. And because that's going to take some time, one of the key challenges that we have is that we know our network is not where it needs to be. The infrastructure in our schools, the wireless, the wired connections, all of that in our schools is not, to be completely blunt, where we need it to be to ensure success in a one-to-one program with technology in our schools. We are going to have some issues with that. I will say that we would have issues with that either way, whether we do one-to-one or whether we don't. So that in itself doesn't go away, but that is an issue that we have and will be ongoing until we're able to refresh that, which will take some years to get to every site with that. We want to make sure that we are continuing the approach to equity with technology. We need to make sure, and this is a fantastic opportunity that we have with some of our one-time emergency related funding that we have access to. We need to have a district-wide plan. We need to have district-wide policy in place around supporting these programs. We need to be very thoughtful about refresh. We need to be thinking very, very carefully about how we're going to sustain this, and you'll hear more about that in our technology plan presentation. We know that we've been really pleased to have the support of our Medea leaders, Anita Johnson, Linda Ortega, who both actually mentioned in, I believe, the LCAP feedback meetings that refresh and one-to-one are district priorities. And I think that their membership will be pleased with these efforts as well. I think this is something that's about kids, but it's also about our teachers. It's about opportunities to teach in these kind of environments.
So instructional expectations is it's an opportunity, can also be a challenge, but our teachers have done an amazing job over the past year plus learning new platforms and learning new things. And I think most of us have taken on things or done things we never thought we'd do in the past year and a half. So I'm looking forward to being able to work with teachers in looking at what are best practices around using tech in your classroom. Because it's going to shift. Our mind is going to have to shift around how we use things a little bit. Connectivity at home is still going to be a challenge. So there is a federal program, federal FCC emergency broadband, where they are offering subsidized broadband to families. So we will definitely be working with families to help them connect the dots so that they can get access to that. And then also continue to explore the use of hotspots. If the broadband doesn't work out for a family, perhaps hotspots might be the answer. So that will also be something we'll look into as well. So looking at instructional support. So this is a huge, it's a big area. It's a big, there's all kinds of research around what works and what doesn't work when you use technology with students. ISTE is an organization that has standards that are nationally known or internationally known. So we will be using those when we start planning trainings for teachers. The TILs, the tech integration leaders, we've already started working on a tech scope and sequence. So what that's going to be is using, many other districts have done this. So kind of piggybacking on what other people have done, coming up with what skills should students have at each grade level so that we have continuity, and going back to our graduate profile, when our students leave us, do they have all of these skills that we would hope they have? And this came to light again in the past 15 months when we assume kids are learning things as we use technology with them, but there are some things that we need to explicitly teach them. So having this scope and sequence will be very helpful for continuity for students and then also for teachers. But we'll also be offering lots of training around digital citizenship, data and privacy principles for staff and administrators. And then just also classroom management, because as I said, just recently, it's going to look differently when you have students in your classroom who are bringing their own device their device that I guess we lent them. So it's just going to look differently. So giving teachers kind of a shift in their mindset of what does it look like when students walk in with a device, how are your procedures and your routines going to change? And then how are you going to effectively use it? It doesn't mean you're using it all the time. It means that you're using it for certain things. And what things should you be using tech for? It's a tool. It's not going to replace you as the teacher. It's going to amplify the things that you're doing in your instruction. So those kind of things are things that we're thinking about and looking at when we start talking about training teachers.
And with that, that completes our presentation today. I think it's pretty clear that this is pretty high level at the moment. We will be back to you with some much more detailed plans, and once we work out a lot of those pieces in terms of how this is going to work logistically. A lot of those pieces. What I will say is we have a lot of information to draw on from other districts, from best practices. One-to-one is no longer a oh my gosh, how do we do this kind of thing? There's a lot of other districts doing one-to-one. There's a lot of places that we can look at for best practices and ways to do this and support. So with that, we will be happy to entertain any questions from the board.
Thank you. Any board members have questions at this point? Right in.
Thank you for pivoting on a dime last March and figuring it out. No matter the bumps and bruises along the way, I know it's much appreciated because we've made it, and kids learned, and they learned with technology. I'm curious if a lot of the concerns I heard from parents this year, or parents who are not technologically savvy in any way, didn't know how to use Zoom and may have ended the year not knowing how to use Zoom themselves, or only accessed it on their phone and never on a bigger device. And I'm wondering if in the planning process will be how to bring parents along too, families along too, who don't necessarily have normal access to technology like this. We take for granted that you work at a desk all day, so everyone knows how to do an email or whatever, and that's not the case. So I'm curious how we'll bring parents along. And then the second thing, and I don't expect an answer because I expect that this is part of planning, is like, will there be the help desk after hours, especially in the secondary? Because the secondary kids might need help and could probably access help when they go home from school and something goes wrong. Will that be available?
Thank you. Yeah, noted.
Thank you so much for what you included in the presentation about focus on equity and access. And a big part of what I learned in my time talking to some families at the Monument Crisis Center over the past couple of weeks is lack of digital literacy within families, especially English language learner families or immigrant families. And I also assume that's part of planning or maybe part of the presentation later tonight, but how to ensure that students remain digitally literate in all of the devices that they are using and will continue to use throughout their educational experience. So, yeah.
Thank you, and we look forward to hearing more.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And real quick, Principal Pike, did you have someone you'd like to introduce? Oh, absolutely.
My wife Marcia.
Okay. Hey, it's all about family here at Mount Diablo. Another one. See, I'm telling you. Well, thank you. Mhm. Okay, 12.2, review the increase and decrease of classified personnel full-time equivalent for the 2020-2021 school year.
Dr. Rubio is going to take these next two items.
Good evening, everyone. Board members, for your review, item 12.2 is our regular review of the increase and decrease of classified personnel, showing our FTEs moving up and down in our processes. If you have any questions.
Any questions? No? Okay. And 12.3?
12.3 is the similar review and increase and decrease, showing the process as positions are going up and down and position funding is changing for certificated personnel. For your review, if you have any questions.
Doesn't look like it. Thank you so much. Okay, next on the agenda is board reports. And breaking tradition, I'm going to go first, just because I wanted to start by thanking all of my fellow trustees for making time in their busy schedules to attend many of the graduations. They were all amazing. They were all unique. And I did a quick little highlight of as I went through each of them. The Ignacio Valley was the first, and the brave ones to get out there first, and they had their Warrior Awards that they give away every year. Olympic had an amazing guest singer that sang Rise Up to the Kids that was very moving. Mount Diablo High School had their presenting of colors by the JORTC, and they had a unique violin rendition of the Star Spangled Banner by a student, which was really, really good. Concord High School Band, which is always excellent, not only played and entertained us before, but they actually played Pomp and Circumstance for the graduates, which was different. Northgate High School had the amazing Trustee Allah speak for them there. She was the highlight of the night. And they also gave away their Summit Awards, correct? Which she also received one, of course. Alt Ed, as always, they had each of the programs have a student speaker, and they always have heartwarming and inspiring stories to tell us. The College Park, they had a group of a cappella singers do the national anthem. And every year at graduations, I'm thinking the NFL's looking in the wrong place for people to sing the national anthem. They should be looking at schools. We have amazing talent. And then both of the Bridge and the Alt Ed had drive-through graduations, which were different but unique, also uniquely fun to watch. We got to see the whole family's excitement as they came through with their decorated cars and honking their horns. So this is my favorite time of year because I think I can speak for the whole board. This is why we're here. This is what we want to see. And with that, I'll close my report and we'll go to Trustee Alas.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Trustee Mason. So I did graduate on on Sunday, so I guess that's the first big MDUSD event that I wanted to talk about. So I'm no longer a student of MDUSD, and I'm ending out my term as student board member at the next meeting on June 23rd, where I'm also expecting the next student board member to be chosen. So I am excited to be able to guide my successor through the ups and downs of being a board member and all the resources that are available to them so that the position remains for so many years. I had my final student district advisory committee meeting of the year, the day before the regular school year ended. So that was on June 1st. And I had almost all of my members come on the second to last day of school, which I thought was pretty extraordinary. They all showed up and we talked about bylaws, potential governance structure for our advisory committee that I'm sending to district staff so that we can approve this student advisory committee as an official committee of the district. And we had Dr. Clark attend the meeting as well. And after Dr. Clark left, all the students were very excited that you came and said that they loved it when staff or Dr. Clark, even board members next year show up to meetings because it makes them feel like their voices are actually heard because they're seeing the adult decision makers there. So that's what I was hoping that entity would become, a proxy advising entity of students to advise me, the superintendent, and other board members and staff. So that was exciting, and that happened last week. And then I was also fortunate enough to attend the Pride flag raising ceremony here at the Dent Center. And it was amazing seeing representatives from, I believe, an organization called PFLAG and then the Rainbow Center come and speak about the importance of Pride Month, the month of June. And it's amazing that MDUSD is setting a model and an example for so many other districts and communities by raising the Pride flag and advocating for inclusivity inside and outside of the classroom. So that's it for my report.
It's difficult to follow such great presentations already. It was an honor to attend the high school senior graduations, and I agree with Mrs. Mason. They are the most memorable part of the year. And of course, the Bridge commencement is heartwarming as well. And those students and their families were just so excited. Parents and community were grateful in the audiences as well as at the drive-through graduations. And I want to thank Samantha Allen and the school district administration for all of the wonderful events and planning that went into them. I know that there were a lot of conversations that were held with the pavilion staff to ensure that everything went smoothly. And I believe, based on my limited observations, that the pavilion prepay for parking may have expedited the parking process for families. So that's to be commended for the pavilion as well. And these wonderful events show our community how great our youth are and what the potential is in our communities. I too attended the Pride flag raising on June 3rd. And what's Ms. Alas cited everyone by title, but what's important, I think, was that we had students, parents, employees, and community members represented at the flag raising. And for those of us who have family members who are members of PFLAG or involved with Pride very closely, it's brought tears to my eyes because I value those individuals so much in our community and the contributions that they make. I did attend a couple of other meetings, as I believe some of the rest of you did. Measure J and Measure C bond oversight meetings were on May 27th. And it's pretty challenging to attend all these events when there's so many things going on. So I apologize to staff. I was a listener with two headsets going at once, and there was important information that was shared, and I appreciated the opportunity to be involved in those meetings. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So for the last few weeks, the majority of my work has centered on end of school year celebrations, summer school, and then also brainstorming for the fall and next school year. I was able to attend most of our graduation ceremonies, including Concord High Summit, Northgate, YV, Mount Diablo High School, and College Now. I was really impressed by how dignified our graduates were. And it was really special to be able to be in the Concord Pavilion for these in-person ceremonies. So I think everyone that was involved in the planning, it was incredibly smooth. And I know that's because of the efforts of our folks in the district office, our employees at school sites who work so hard to put on these very special ceremonies for our students and their families. I want to really congratulate the graduates again. It's been an incredibly difficult year, so it was just wonderful to be able to see these ceremonies. And I'd also like to thank everyone who was able to attend these ceremonies. Even though we weren't able to pack the pavilion this year, the cheers were really loud and enthusiastic. And that's exactly the kind of response that our graduates deserve and have earned. This morning, I was able to stop by El Dorado Middle School to see how the first week of summer school is going. I want to give a special thanks to the team at El Dorado, from admin to counselors, teachers, support staff, the facilities crew, everyone who serves students at that school site. I keep going back to El Dorado because it's just kind of a short walk from my house, but also because I feel really welcome there. I really appreciate the clear efforts at that school site to work as a team within the school and also within the feeder pattern. While I was there today, I saw students painting rocks in the CARES program. I saw other students working on math skills. I saw a bit of activity in one of the ESY extended school year rooms. And I observed an orderly campus where it's clear that mental health, student safety and comfort, and academics are prioritized. I noticed that a lot of classes were taking advantage of the fresh air and beautiful weather. Activities were arts and crafts based, social, physical, and academic. There seems to be a clear focus on the rising sixth graders who are coming in from our elementary schools, which was really fun to see. I think this kind of focus is really going to promote these students feeling really comfortable when they arrive in the fall. So I'm excited to see that level of support for our students. I also appreciate that the summer program is fully staffed. So I really want to thank our teachers and other educators and other staff members for stepping up after a year that they worked all year incredibly hard, just like the students did. And so I appreciate them being there for the students over the summer. And I'm also really looking forward to scheduling other visits with other school sites. So I'm excited to check out more of our other summer school programs. I also want to mention that I was able to attend part of the Concord High instrumental music performance. It was the same day as the graduation, I think, for Mount Diablo High School, so it wasn't able to stay as long as I would have liked. But it was an incredible performance, and I want to thank Mr. Lojano for inviting us. And that's all I have this evening.
Thank you.
Good evening. Congratulations on all the graduates. I went to all the graduations too, so I don't want to recap that, except that it's the first high school graduations I've been to since I was in high school. So it's been decades. So it was both inspiring and fun, but especially, I don't remember which one it was at, but a mom yelled, "That's my baby." And I felt that to my core because that was my mother that many years ago, both embarrassment and love at the same time. So I hope that that student felt that same because you will be 46 years old and still be your mother's baby. So, I just wanted to, so not to recap all that, I just wanted to take a moment looking ahead to, well, this is relation to the technology equity presentation we just had and looking forward to the LCAP presentation we will have in just a few moments. And I've talked about this book a lot, but Street Data, for those of you in the room, I love it. And it's so relevant to our work on the LCAP that I think it'll inform it, if not this year, it will inform our work in the future. But what I wanted to point out right now is the definition of equity traps. There's a whole chapter on equity traps and tropes, and the definition of equity and trap and trope. So I think it's relevant to our upcoming conversation. So equity is an approach to ensuring equally high outcomes for all by removing the predictability of success or failure that currently correlates with any racial, social, economic, or cultural factor. Ensuring high outcomes for all is not a task that can be checked off a list. Equity isn't a destination, but an unwavering commitment to a journey. It can be easy to focus on where we hope to land and lose sight of the deliberate daily actions that constitute the process. Day-to-day fires and the weight of the system make it enticing to hold others and not ourselves accountable. Thus, we reorient ourselves to working toward equity, which requires us to acknowledge that our systems, practices, and narratives are designed to perpetuate disparities in outcomes for marginalized students, deliberately identify barriers that predict success or failure and actively disrupt them, consistently examine personal identity, bias, and both personal and collective contributions to the creation and/or reproduction of inequitable practices, reallocate resources like tools, time, money, people, support to ensure every child gets what they need to succeed, to thrive socially, emotionally, and intellectually, and cultivate the unique gifts, talents, and interests that every person possesses. Street data, real-time, on-the-ground, systemic information is our guiding light as we work toward equity. It's going to take a radical shift in our data paradigm to propel the kind of instructional transformation we need. Deep, equitable, culturally sustaining learning. The traps and tropes are landmines that exist to deter us from this understanding. So I love that framing, and I look forward to bringing it into our discussions. That's my report. Thanks.
Okay, that takes us to the
I-
superintendent.
I'm sorry, but I do have President Cown's brief report.
I guess. we should have that report.
Well, I shared with trustee Alas that she has now, she's now started yes. So anyway, it's all good. So President Cowan reported out, I attended many of our graduation ceremonies and I'm so glad we were able to hold them in person. I enjoyed speaking at the Northgate and alternative education ceremonies. Thank you to the City of Concord for broadcasting all of our graduations and posting them online. I enjoyed our second annual MDUSD Rainbow Flag Raising event and want to thank Clay Cord PFLAG and the Rainbow Community Center for their partnership in supporting our students and educators. Going forward, I hope that we can update the progress version of the Pride flag and also ensure that every school has a Pride flag to fly by next June. I know that our staff has been hard at work, not only getting summer school up and running and schools ready to open fully in person this fall, but they've also been creating strategic long-range plans, including our LCAP, budget and technology plans. I am thankful to see in these plans specific strategies that came from parents, staff, students, and this systemic instructional review. I'm so full of hope about the coming year and full of gratitude to all who worked so hard to make all of this possible. Thank you and congratulations to all our graduates.
Thank you. Now your report.
All right, can I get the presentation? Great, thank you. I just have a short report this evening. I gave an extensive report at the last meeting, but I'm just going to hit on some on a few things. So let's go. Again, congratulations to family, staff, and graduates. You know, as a pre-K to 12 district, our product is the students who leave our organization. And I'm proud to say, and this board should be very proud, that we had students who in our bridge program who completed their time with us. We had students from our alternative ed programs, you know, obviously from our comprehensive high schools. Every student does not need to take the same path. And I'm so thankful and so proud of the many different pathways that we have for our students to complete their formal high school education within us. And then afterwards, after they leave our organization, they have many opportunities. We have students who are going to some of the top schools in the nation. We have students who are entering into the military. We have students who are taking a gap year, and we have students who are going off to do many other things. But this district has prepared them, at least educationally, to make those choices and to have those opportunities to go off and reach their full potential. So I just want to acknowledge the work of this board, first of all, for really setting the expectation. But I have to spend a moment just really acknowledging staff, you know, whether it be from our cafeteria staff to maintenance staff to you know, our campus supervisors, our instructional aides, our teachers, administrators, district office administrators. I mean, it just goes on and on. This truly is a team effort. And at many of the ceremonies, I shared that every single employee in this district is here for one reason and one reason only, and that's to support students. And so whatever hat they wear, it's critical. And so I just really want to acknowledge the work. And I know if I start naming people, I'm going to leave people out. So I'm not going to do that. But I just, you know, many of them are in this room tonight, but there's just so much work that goes into that. And I know the graduation, it's a ceremonial event, but it's really been the years and months of hard work to get us to that point. So just really want to acknowledge that. I want to go back to these key reports and actions. So again, I sort of shared this at the last meeting, but we've made some progress since. Our systemic instructional review, which we recently completed and was presented to this board, and we have pretty much weekly meetings with CCE about our progress. And I know Ms. Sachs has every other day meetings with them. We also had FCMAT has completed their 2 studies, and so they are now in the process of writing the reports, and they also are looking for time to come and get in front of this board and present their findings to the board. We're not going to pull everyone back in July, so we're gonna do that very early in August, more than likely in a study session format, so you guys can have time to really dig deep into some of the findings and recommendations. At the last meeting, we presented our 3rd interim budget. Tonight, we are presenting you know, just something that I think we all should be proud of, although it is fluid, but our LCAP. And I do want to acknowledge Jennifer Sachs and her team and all that went into putting this document together. It's never perfect, but it's something that lives and grows as time goes on. And, you know, no 2 students are exactly the same. And so it is very difficult to come up with a plan that meets the needs of all students. And so that's why it's a fluid document, and it's ever changing. And so I do want to acknowledge that LCAP will be coming before you tonight, and then it'll be coming for final consideration for approval on the 23rd. Also, I want to acknowledge our budget for next year. The business and finance team has worked just tirelessly, and the goalposts have been continuing to move throughout this budget process. And it's been very difficult to nail down concrete assumptions and to know what funding is coming our way. And all of this is fluid. And so for the team to put together this budget, I really want to commend the work of Dr. Gonzalez, of Mika, and I'm going to mispronounce your last name, so I'm just not going to do it. But that I'm not going to do it. So, and then again, you know, our last plan that we sort of have, but we are on schedule is that SACE plan. And so hopefully what we're going to see through all of those 6 different plans is we're going to see coherence amongst the plans, and really we're going to pull out those commonalities and pull out those, you know, those areas of focus where we can really pool our resources and efforts towards reaching those goals. So I'm very, very pleased with that work in the midst of all that we've had facing us. Next, this was our, you know, our summer school summary that we had been sharing, you know, for the last month or so. And here it is in action. So these are preliminary summer school numbers. So at the TK 5th grade general ed sites, we have 2,674 current students. And in our 6th through 8th grade, our middle school, and again, it's middle school, so it's always a little bit, you know, more fluid with the middle schoolers, but we have 625 students, but that's still a good number. We're very proud of that. And then high school, which is primarily for credit recovery and for those students to maybe in some cases to even improve grades or whatnot, we have 2,600 students. And then for our special education students, where part of their services requires us to have an extended school year, you can see there that we have 514 students in preschool through 8, and we have close to 174 students in high school. And so although we've just completed our 3rd day of summer school, I just want to say that, you know, we are fully staffed. I'm not going to put out a call to say, hey, any parents who are at home and want to bring your kids down, bring them down. But I know that we're working with families who either need to bow out of summer school or who are looking for those additions later on. But things are going very well, and we should be very, very proud of what we're offering for our students. It is fully in person for the TK through 8th grade, and in the high school is a bit of a hybrid. So again, we're still honoring our MOU with some of our labor partners until June 30th, although some of the guidance is going to be changing on June 15th, but we're still going to honor that MOU until the end of summer school. So again, just very, very excited about the efforts. You know, it's been a very long school year, and then just the pivot with just 2 days from the last day of school to the first day of summer school, really just the whole teams across the school sites and whatnot really just need to be acknowledged for their work and commitment. And I hope that the parents, you know, are getting out of it, you know, seeing that their students are being engaged, and, you know, it's not a punishment to go to summer school or whatnot. We're hoping that there's enrichment activities, and we're really, you know, reintroducing these students to face-to-face instruction and learning and back with their friends and, you know, and also their teachers. I do want to, I know the next item on the agenda is fall 2021, so I always want to leave that space open. If there's any concerns, comments, suggestions, questions from the trustees that we have, either I can address them or I have staff here that can address them. But we are planning full go in the fall. We're busily planning that. And so just some dates is we're going to be welcoming new teacher orientations on August 5th and 6th. All teachers will participate in our in-service days from the 9th to the 11th. August 12th will be our first day. And then Labor Day will be our first vacation. The end of the first quarter for secondary will end on October 8th. And on October 11th, we have another in-service day scheduled for teachers and staff. And on the 5th, that'll be the end of the trimester for elementary students. And then we'll go into Veterans Day on November 11th. And so that's pretty much our first, couple months of school laid out there for everyone. So we're very excited for that. And there's lots of work that we're doing to prepare for that. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions that the trustees may have.
Any questions?
No.
Nope. All right. Moving along. Consent agenda. Items listed under consent agenda are considered routine and will be approved or adopted by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. However, any item may be removed from the consent agenda upon the request of any member of the board and acted upon separately. So do we have anything that we want to pull from the consent agenda?
I like to pull 15.2. 15.2.
Okay. That was on my list as well, so. If that's it, I'll entertain a motion.
So Madam President, maybe before we entertain that motion, can I have Dr. Aguirre come up and address any questions for 15.2, and then we can go on with the slate?
Sure.
Is that
That's
okay?
fine. Yeah.
Dr. Aguirre, will you please come and approach the podium or the table over here? And then if there's a question or something that you would like further information on 15.2, you gotta turn on the mic.
Can I just make? I just want to make sure that's allowed in consent. Like I thought the only reason I would pull it is to ask a question.
Yeah.
But, oh, and then put it back on consent. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm
Let
saying
me
is,
just say, my question was, is this so timely that we can't put it off to our next meeting?
you gotta turn on the microphone.
It's hard for my-
I apologize. We could postpone it if we needed to.
Okay, that would be my preference. If that's okay with the rest of the board, I think we'll go ahead and do that.
Thank you.
And then if you have any questions, if you'll submit
We'll
those
forward them
in
to
in
you.
writing, we'll get them to Dr. Aguirre and we'll
Perfect.
respond to whatever questions there are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now I'll entertain a motion.
Madam President, I move that the board approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 15.2, which will be returned to the agenda at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Second.
Trustee Alas?
Yes.
Trustee Mayo?
Yes.
Trustee McFerrin?
Yes.
Trustee Nzewi?
Yes.
Trustee Mason votes yes. Passes 4+1. Okay. We won't have a 7, so we're on 18, 18.1. Review the draft district strategic technology plan 2020, 21 to 31. I will tell you, when I was a child and heard 31, I was sure I'd be dead by then. I'm not so sure now.
No, we're gonna do a long-term plan that you'll be able to see through its fruition. So, I have, again, I have our tech team up here again, who's gonna take us through this plan swiftly and I'm joking.
He's coaching you there.
Yes, yes. I'm gonna turn it over to the team.
Thank you, Dr. Clark, and we will be as swift as we possibly can. I understand, because there is a lot of paper in this plan, and we're certainly not going to get into every detail by any means tonight. So thank you for your time tonight in allowing us to present our draft of the district strategic technology plan. I'm really pleased once again to introduce Megan Gertz. And again, our presentation is now wrong, not technology TOSA, but curriculum specialist. And that's a fantastic thing. I'd also like to acknowledge the assistance of executive cabinet members in this plan. They've had an opportunity to provide some input and been very helpful in the work as well. It's been very much a team effort, and I think you'll see from the presentation tonight how much of a team effort this has been with our community, with our community of schools, with our central office staff and so on and so forth. So where we left you last time, back in September, when I presented the plan for the plan, was with the call to action to develop a long-range strategic technology plan for our district focused on teaching and learning and supporting our core business services. And in my view, a plan is a statement of what needs to change to achieve a goal. And I think that flows through this plan. And I think the work of the task force really reflected that there are things that we have to build on, but there are also things that need to change. And I think you'll see that reflected in this plan. So plan development process. This has been our process. And you can see the nice little marker there of where we are in the process. So we presented to you back in September about the plan for the plan. We then subsequently established a strategic technology planning task force comprised of a large number of members, which you'll see shortly on the next slide. And Megan will be discussing that. We then launched, and that was a fantastic process. I just have to provide a little commentary on that. That was really a very inclusive, very collaborative process that our task force members they really stepped up and provided their expertise and knowledge and thoughtfulness to that process. We then launched into plan writing, which I am glad to say, very glad to say, is now at its initial completion with the draft presented to you. We now are at the point of we launched into a process of gaining stakeholder input on that draft from obviously within the district. We provided this to our TILs, our technology integration leaders, for their feedback. We made sure that all of our staff in the technology department were able to provide feedback, and we got some fantastic feedback from those folks. We're now here today at the board presentation, presenting you this draft and asking for your input as part of this stakeholder input, because obviously you are key. I don't know if stakeholders is the right term, but stakeholders in this process as well, and important contributors to what we do as a district. So we will then provide any additional opportunities for stakeholder input subsequent to this meeting, and then finalize the plan. And our intent is to ask you to approve this plan. I'm anticipating at our first meeting in August, at which point we will have a completed plan for implementation at that point. And as I mentioned before, obviously implementation is not necessarily a starting point in August, as we're already obviously doing work towards a lot of these components already. All right.
Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go through the task force and kind of what the task force did. So it was comprised of community members and teachers and students, parents. It was as Robert said, a very diverse group and a fabulous group of people to work with. So we started in December was our first meeting, and we kind of got together and we broke everybody in. We were all on Zoom. So we did breakout rooms, and everybody went through what is our current state of technology in the district and teaching and learning. And we gave them specific topics. And then we asked, where do you think we should be? So think future, what do you think it should look like? And then we had the group share out. And from that, we looked at what are the different areas that we need to work on, and created 4 groups. And so the 4 groupings were teaching and learning, digital tools, privacy, and safety. That was one group, a lot of topics. The second one was equitable access, devices, equipment, and funding. The third group was tech support. And the fourth group was tech services, infrastructure, and security. And so what the participants, the task force members did was select which group they felt they could give the most input, or they were most comfortable with, or was their wheelhouse. And so they selected a group, and then with that came up with what is the vision for that area. So they created a vision statement and then created action items, and those are similar to, if not exactly, what you see in the actual tech plan. So where do we need to go? What are the things we need to do? And obviously some of them have multiple things in them, but our big point was we need actionable items and things that we can measure. Like, are we almost there? Are we there? And so that was the task force, and we obviously shared the plan back with them to get their input as well before bringing it to you tonight.
Right. So key drivers of this plan, when I say drivers, I mean inputs that helped us to build this plan. So in addition to our strategic technology planning task force, we've also pulled a lot of information from industry partners and industry leaders around best practices and good practices related to technology and education and technology in education. So obviously, Common Core state standards have technology skills embedded very heavily within those standards. COSN, which is the Consortium for School Networking, is the leader really in IT leadership in education institutions. We are a member district of that organization. They provide some fantastic resources around technology leadership and direction. ISTE is the International Society for Technology and Education, more on the ed tech side of things, and they've really come around in the last several years, and actually, honestly, they've adopted a model very similar to our graduate profile as their set of standards. And I think we were first, to be honest, before they actually integrated that sort of standards thinking. Common Sense Media is another organization that really does a lot of work around digital literacy, which Trustee Alas, you mentioned, is really important, along with digital citizenship, digital tools, all those kinds of things. So those were key drivers of the plan. And obviously, the key driver of the plan is obviously our students, no question about that. And that was front of mind for all of us as we were going through this process.
And then looking at our graduate profile, again, we looked at that briefly in the one-to-one plan. But just keeping this at the forefront of our mind is this is the profile, this is the statement of our goals and outcomes for our students when they leave our system. So as we wrote this plan, this was definitely at the front of our mind. And to Robert's point, the ISTE standards very much align with what we have in this. So I was not on the team in 2014, but whoever was on that team did a very good job of kind of doing a picture, a whole person picture of what the skills are, in addition to content standards that we would like our students to leave with.
And I would add that actually a large number of districts are taking on that work now and identifying a portrait of a graduate as a list of outcomes for students that are beyond just content standards, as Megan was mentioning. There are a lot more things that students get out of us as a district and should leave us with, and this is a great statement of that. So as we were conducting this work, we really, as we're writing the plan, as we're going through the task force process, three really clear themes started to emerge for us that really, what we found was the really best way to do this was to actually really state these explicitly as really what the plan is. And I actually do want to read these. It's not good practice to read from a PowerPoint, but I think this is important. So these three key imperatives are to empower teachers to provide relevant, meaningful instructional opportunities through technology, to provide students with regular, meaningful opportunities to engage with the modern world through technology to become college and career ready, and then to ensure the district can maintain the necessary technologies and support systems to ensure every student graduates ready to thrive in a technology-rich world. And really, in a nutshell, that is the plan. Those three things are the plan. All the other stuff, to a degree, is noise. This is sort of details of how we're going to achieve that, but ultimately, this is the plan. So we'd like to actually just, and we will be incredibly brief, Dr. Clark, with this, but we would like to just give a brief overview of the seven sections of this plan that I think really do give some depth to this. We know you've had the opportunity to review this. We know the community has and will continue to have the opportunity to review this. And we're very, very eager to have any input from you, the board, from our staff, and from our community and we'll work to incorporate that as we move forward. So we're very definitely wanting more input and making sure that we have that really collaborative, community-centered approach to what this is, because this is a plan for change. So without further ado, I'll pass it to Megan to talk about goal 1.
Perfect. So goal 1 is modern teaching and learning. And basically this goal is just to to foster a culture of lifelong learning and using technology in ways to be effective and efficient. And a big piece of this is the one-to-one plan that we presented to you earlier. So it's allowing our students to explore things using technology, to allow them to have technology to amplify the instruction of their amazing teachers, and just to give access to multiple perspectives. So they have a device that they can have multiple perspectives on a historical event. They don't have to read it from a textbook necessarily that gives you one. So that's just an example, but that is modern teaching. Okay, so that's our first goal. The second goal is equitable access to technology, and we talked about that also in the one-to-one presentation. So I don't need to go into that, but equitable access to resources, curriculum, tools, allowing students to easily have access to topics from, again, multiple perspectives from different places in the world. So that's our second goal.
All right. Goal 3 is professional and timely support. And so really here, what we're talking about is making sure that all of our technology users in our district have the ability to use the technology reliably and effectively where they need it and when they need it. So a couple of points there. One is to really implement an enterprise level of support. And when I say enterprise level, I mean having systems in place, both as a technology department and as a district, that can ensure that our students and staff have that equitable access as they need it. So these are things like our ticketing system, making sure that we're providing everyone with the opportunity to obtain support equitably, standards for devices, standards for infrastructure, all of those kind of things that we can make sure that we are able to work with our vendors appropriately on obtaining the right technologies to meet our needs. Making sure that we have an appropriate refresh cycle identified and obviously adequately funded to make sure that we can continue to support these over time. Disaster recovery processes, all of those kinds of things that really make sure that we are acting as an enterprise organization that is really operating with its users in mind. All right, goal 4 is robust network infrastructure and technology operations. So we need a secure, reliable, and effective network and technology services to support the needs of our users. And as we've mentioned, we have a number of challenges in this area that we're working to address. And again, that's going to take some time. Obviously, there's a lot of pieces involved there, and this is one of the most in-depth and probably technical portions of the plan itself, because there are some complexities to this. But really, even though we have challenges here, we have a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of really great things that we have in place. I'm going to tear up a little bit. Actually, one of the main ones that I can think of is our staff in technology and information services that is obviously helping us today. And they are incredibly dedicated. I have really found that they are just, I can't say enough, but they really are stepping up to the challenges of not just distance learning, but also looking into the future to help us to get where we need to for students and teachers. We obviously this is an outline of a plan to not be in have some of the challenges that we've had anymore. And establishing a refresh cycle is obviously a huge component of that, making sure that we know exactly what we need, having standards of that and how to acquire that appropriately. Goal 5 is comprehensive cybersecurity and data privacy. We know that there there are a lot of threats out there. You see this in the news every day, not just to the network and to our information systems, but also to the data that is housed in those information systems. And so working to make sure that we're protecting that and doing everything we can to ensure that we're safe, that our students are safe, that our teachers know how to protect students, that our system learns learns about how to protect students, how to appropriately store data. Those kind of things are really, really important. So having robust technical protections and policies in place is really the focus of this section, but also to educate users, make sure that we're providing users with the ability to learn with information that's timely and relevant about how to protect themselves and students.
And that's one thing in the fall we're going to be doing, launching a big data privacy, just information for teachers and learning for them, for staff as well. But we also have worked this school year to come up with a digital tools approval process so that staff, teachers, principals, if there's a tool that they would like to use, that it has a process to go through. So it will go through principals, ed services, our tech department, legal, student services, and purchasing. And each of those will look at it for, be reviewed for instructional benefit. Is the terms of service, according to our legal department, is that something, are the terms something that we're okay with? Are they going to be using data appropriately? Is it secure? Does it comply with the laws that we have to comply with as well? So that has been kind of a big process coming, but we finally are getting to the end of figuring out what we're using and making sure that we have everything in place to move forward.
Goal 6 is sustainability. Obviously, we need to be able to continue to do what we want to do into the future for as long as we need to do that. So making sure that we maximize available funding opportunities, which we, of course, are doing right now with a number of sort of one-time opportunities that we have. Making sure that a refresh plan is in place that I've mentioned a number of times for obvious reasons. Sustaining our one-to-one programs, making sure that we maximize the use of our E-rate refund or refunds and actually reimbursements from the federal government to ensure that we're taking advantage of those programs that are designed to help us to ensure connectivity for our students. And making sure that we're targeting our grant funding appropriately. And that's actually one of the benefits that can come from really being organized about how we acquire technology, is to make sure that we can target grant funding that becomes available in the right areas, instead of waiting for a grant to appear and saying, should we apply? It's like, we know exactly which ones we want to look for and how to use that because we have a plan for it in place. Modernizing our purchasing practices is another thing. We are an enterprise level organization, and we need to demand enterprise level partnerships with the vendors we choose to do business with. I can't emphasize that enough. We are a large school district. We have the ability to work with our vendors and make sure that they're meeting our needs. And if they're not, then we need to find other vendors who will. That's incredibly important. We need to leverage cooperative contracts where possible. We need to do all of those kind of things that large organizations are able to do to make sure that we're maximizing not just the funding that we have, but also the opportunity to ensure that we're getting the appropriate service and tools that we need to do the job. We need to identify efficiencies, and this is something we need to really be thoughtful about from this moment right here. Is how can we be efficient with this? How can we identify cost savings? We have this opportunity to go one-to-one. That there is research that actually identifies that it is possible to not just break even, but actually to save money in a one-to-one environment. That doesn't mean that we'll necessarily be able to achieve that, but that there is research out there that shows that that is possible. And so we need to be intentional about how we can identify those sorts of cost savings. The last goal, technology governance, continuous improvement, and communication. And this is kind of a little bit of a catch-all here. But these things are really important. Technology governance is really the process by which our entire district owns the priorities that we set in our technology plan. We need to have processes in place where we're having shared decision-making, consultation with stakeholders, revising our plan regularly. It was remarked that this is the 2031 plan. I think that's really more of a statement that this is not just a 5-year plan or a 3-year plan. This is a plan that goes into the future. Is 2031 a little arbitrary there? Probably so, but who knows what technology is going to look like in 2031, right? But what we will do is establish governance processes to make sure that we're revising this plan on an annual basis and involving stakeholders in that process. Internal governance as well is important around issues around data, around technology standards, those sorts of things. Continuous improvement, I sort of mentioned a little bit in terms of sustainability. What are we doing right and what do we need to change? And that's really related to the process of revising this plan on a regular basis. And finally, under communication, that's about communicating our progress. How are we doing? What are we doing right? And making sure that that communication is multi-directional, not just us communicating information, but us seeking information from stakeholders. With that is the completion of our presentation, and we are seeking your input on this plan.
All right, any questions or suggestions from board members? I know we're going to be seeing this a lot more, but go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question. How are we, how you have such a short time frame between now and when you bring it back to the board? How are you listening to stakeholder feedback besides this, but from all the other stakeholders?
Right. So we've already done quite a substantial amount of that. We've made sure that our task force has the plan. We've made sure that now our community has access to the plan, and we'd certainly value feedback greatly with that. We've made sure that our stakeholder groups internally have access to this, and we've asked them for feedback on that. If you have further ideas for how we should seek feedback, we'd be more than willing to engage in that.
Yeah, I was probably thinking more of the external, thinking of the people who are trying not to think about school right now, but how do we reach them in June and July? So parents and their friends and neighbors and whoever, the external stakeholders is who I was thinking about. And I don't have the answers, I'm sorry. but I'm totally open to being a thought partner in trying to figure that out though.
Absolutely.
So I'll think on it.
Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed your hand.
I didn't raise my hand, I'm sorry. So I'm not a digital native, as everyone can attest to, but I do love to play in the sandbox. And my questions are probably going to be very naive, so I apologize for them. And this one question perhaps is more of a curriculum question than it is a technology question. In attending some of the CTE meetings, there have been discussions about the fact that we didn't have computers that students could use at home to complete their CTE coursework, especially in engineering and in graphic design, because the programs are so expensive and you can't necessarily get it on devices. Plus, they normally have to be on desktops rather than mobile devices, a laptop computer. So how are we addressing that in this plan? Or because we want students to be successful in CTE and they're going to need to do the work outside of school hours.
That is a fantastic question, and one that I don't have a perfect answer to. What I will say, though, is that I think a lot of the structures that exist in this plan allow us to provide technology to students, say through one-to-one programs that provide not a 100% solution, but a 90 to 95% solution. We can meet the needs, 90%, 95% of our curriculum needs with a one-to-one device. By doing that, we can target opportunities for the acquisition of other devices and other technologies to those sorts of programs that we identify as important. So for instance, in CTE programs, where when we are utilizing funding opportunities within CTE, we can say we no longer need to use that funding to provide base technology. We can now target that technology at the real needs that we have that really meet these additional needs that those students have for those programs. In terms of home access to those things, that's a challenge nationally, internationally, of course. There are technologies that are possible for us to utilize. Virtual desktops, for instance, that actually host a virtual computer in the cloud, those sorts of things. Those are things we can certainly establish. Obviously there's funding involved with that and resources and the ability to from a technical standpoint to make that happen. But there are ways to do that to enable home access to those kinds of programs if we choose to do that. So that I think as we move through the plan and think about how we move forward with this and decision making around it and the governance process, we can establish those priorities if we choose that those are important.
Thank you, because I'm glad we're looking at it from the planning standpoint, because it's important that our students have these experiences before they even graduate from high school. And my own daughter works in the graphic design field. She's been able to work from home because her company was able to provide the access to the software that she needs in the digital graphic programs. And you know that we all love our own devices, whether they belong to the district or not. When students use a device for the year, typically I would think that we would be refreshing, or not refreshing, perhaps updating a device in the summer, or we would want to do that. How long would a student possibly be without their computer? Because we know that if it's in the student's hands, it's more likely that they will explore their field of interest more if they have it continually, and that includes during the summer.
I am so glad you asked that question because we have actually thought of that. And one of the advantages of the way that we manage our Chromebooks is that, to be completely honest, and we need to set it up this way, but there is no reason that we ever need to actually touch a device unless something goes wrong from the hardware perspective. We can actually manage those devices, whether they're at home or on campus. And so ideally, and I do want to stress ideally, because we need to obviously make sure that procedures are in place for this, and we need to be thinking about property management and all of those kinds of things that we need to, obviously these are district assets and we need to make sure that we're being responsible with that. But this is part of the planning process to make sure that we can be thoughtful about providing those to students, issue a device. In an ideal world, maybe I'm making this up, but 6th grade issue a device. We don't ever see that device until that student gets a new device in 9th grade, something like that. And then they get another device that they carry through high school. And again, that's an ideal world. We are still in the planning process for all this with the one-to-one piece. And so we will update you on that as we get there. But yes, that's a really good point.
What I was thinking about too, many of our students sign up for AP classes and the teachers will assign books to read or different things for students to review before August school starts. So having their device provides that opportunity if the materials are available through their Chromebooks.
Absolutely.
Of course, there is the challenge in connecting with home devices such as printers. And yes, some of us are still print. We like the feel of paper and being able to scribble on things as we're moving along. That will be easy for families and students to do typically.
That is, I'm going to be completely honest with you. That is a challenge for us.
Okay.
It is very difficult. Now, those things are all possible, but when we get into directly supporting devices at home, we're set up and we're resourced to address the needs of 50-something schools and the staff and students in those schools. We're not necessarily staffed and set up to support 29,000 families.
Okay.
And so that becomes a challenge for us. Having said that, there are many resources we can provide that will help families to be able to do those things for themselves. We can also work with our schools to make sure that they have some technical know-how in those kinds of ways if they get questions about that from families. This is one of those things that I guess would be categorized as a wicked problem because it's something that we don't necessarily have all of the tools we would
Okay.
like to have to support.
All right. And the last strange thought that came into my mind was as I saw pictures of Chromebooks being collected and stacked on tables in multi-use rooms. Are we wanting the Chromebooks for inventory process or are folks having to handwrite numbers? I'm just curious about the process there.
The process for reclaiming the Chromebooks for this, yes.
Yeah.
And I see Eric and Mario over there who are directly involved in this and are chuckling now because yes, that is quite the process to bring back 17,000-ish Chromebooks into our district and make sure that we are adequately accounting for those. We have been talking, for weeks about how to do that. We've provided guidance to our schools to help us to initially triage those devices regarding, with devices that we know are at end of life and we need to e-waste, devices that are going to need repairs and devices that are good to be put back in service. So we're in that process right now and getting those wired back into carts, getting those really secured at our sites to make sure that we have the protections in place that we have available to make sure that we're not going to, we're being responsible with those in terms of the storage. I'm not sure if that fully answers your question.
Well, I was just hoping that it would be fast and easy rather than complicated and dirty. But I think it's a combination of both.
We love
time consuming.
We love fast and easy, but this is not, no. Oh, and you mentioned about inventory as well, just to briefly mention that. We are using Destiny Resource Manager as our asset management system for our schools. And so we are enrolling those devices as they come back in. And so we will have a much better process for checking in and out devices moving forward.
Thank you for indulging my questions. I appreciate it. And
no problem. And I trust if any questions or ideas come to us, we can just shoot you an email.
Please, please, please do. Yes.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us to the public hearing on the LCAP. And I think there is a presentation, correct? I think we'll have the presentation and then I'll open it for all the public to come up here and share their thoughts.
Yes, and so I'm going to have Ms. Sachs go ahead and take this item.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. And I just want to recognize Megan Gertz's work. Even before she was appointed, she got hauled into this meeting in order to provide presentations on a variety of topics. So thank you, Megan, for all of your diligence. So tonight is a brief presentation on the Local Control Accountability Plan. And prior to starting, I just want to recognize all of the individuals across the district that really supported the effort in developing this document. The California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, their SIR report was a major anchor for this document because it really does focus on instruction, especially focusing on the needs of our historically underserved students. And that's really why this document, as we go into the next 3 years, looks very different and it feels different than the documents prior. So thank you to CCEE as well as the Mount Diablo community at large and the different departments that did weigh in order to review it and add their information to the draft. Next slide, please. Oh, I do. I'm in charge of the PowerPoint. Thank you. Okay, so the Local Control Accountability Plan, for those of you that may not be familiar, is a 3-year plan supporting the needs of all students. However, I did mention that there is kind of a prioritization on really focusing targeted actions towards those students that have been historically underserved. In the first column, the LCAP must include student achievement indicators, goals and actions and related expenditures. It does not go into the same detail as what you will be hearing about later on in our agenda, which is our full budget, but it is more of a budget plan, and it really shows you and tells a story about where you're going to be spending your time and effort and resources. LCAPs must include services that target some of the student groups that we've mentioned, underserved students in certain racial ethnic groups that have just struggled to get services and support in our system, low-income students, emerging bilingual students, which is actually some new language that I'm proposing that we move forward with instead of English language learners. They're really emerging bilingual and biliterate students. Students with unique needs, foster youth, as well as students experiencing homelessness. Part of what the LCAP does require us to do is we must address 8 state priorities. And in order to take a look at those in a little bit more of a colorful fashion, they're everything from basic services, implementation of state standards, course access, and all of those fall under a large category of conditions for learning. So these are really, what are your teachers properly assigned? Do they have the textbooks that they needed? What about your facilities? People outcomes are really about the state metrics, and they fall into pupil achievement as well as other pupil outcomes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that on a next slide. And then in the overarching area of engagement, which is not only parent involvement, but pupil engagement, as well as school climate. So again, 3 major categories. There are 2 boxes that are really on the top row, the very first one and the very last one. And these are still student groups that we do take a look at, but really the county offices of education focus their LCAPs around those 2 additional state priorities. So this year, the document actually has 4 sections because one LCAP document was not enough. They decided to actually go back in history and add a couple additional documents, and I'll share about that. As you look at the document itself, if you scroll through it, on the very first page, and I'd just like to let everybody know that there is a table of contents in case you do not want to read all 4 sections and you want to zero in on in a particular area. What's a requirement is that we start off our document with the budget overview for parents/families. And really what this is kind of a balcony view of our budget. And it really takes a look at what we're getting in revenues as well as some overall expenses. It's important to note that not all of our budgets are included. So again, if folks have more specific questions about the budget, they should really hang in there for 18.3, which we go into our budget itself, our preliminary budget. It does talk about the local control accountability plan as well as budgeting and expenses for our learning continuity plan. And that was a plan that was brought to the board in the fall. So it can be a little bit confusing as they're kind of comparing 2 sets of documents in different types of funding sources. But after the budget overview for parents, we have the LCAP update. Now, what are we updating? Well, we're updating the LCAP that we should have updated in the middle of the pandemic in June 2020. So what the state decided to do is they didn't want to give us a pass. They wanted us to go back in time, pull all of the expenses, all of the budgets, all of the story, and put that into the document. So that is the next section of what you can take a look at. And it's an update on metrics. How did we do in different areas? Of course, some of the metrics we did not repeat because we were in the middle of a pandemic. So the dashboard, which is generally at the place that we go for our academic achievement, that is something where we had to pull out some other metrics. At the end of each of the goals, however, there is a nice analysis which leads into the new LCAP plan. So it's really, what did you learn from the entire experience and how are you utilizing this new knowledge as you begin to develop your new 3-year LCAP? But of course, in the middle of that, we had to do a learning continuity and attendance plan in response to the COVID pandemic. So they wanted us to have a 3rd section, which we revisited back on the LCP plan. And we really, again, response to the COVID pandemic. This plan went to the board in the fall of 2020. And so within that, the document provides updates in the area of in-person offerings, distance learning, as well as people and family engagement. It talks about nutritional services. So they wanted a brief update on exactly what happened in those areas and then to estimate the budgets versus the expenses. The fourth section of this document, now we get to the new LCAP, which goes from 2021 to 2024. And this is very much plagiarized, many of it from the CERT report, because it really does focus in on all of the wonderful stakeholder engagement that they helped lead, as well as the instructional areas that they really took a look at and felt that, you know what, these would be the best next steps for Mount Diablo. And many of them were ones that we have been talking about, but it was really nice to be validated and to have them help to create some action plans for us. The things to mention, again, the stakeholder was not only certain things Mount Diablo did, but also captured in the SO report. Within the metrics, you have state, local, as well as disaggregated metrics for really the first time. There's some blanks in the document, which really leads us to take a look at what's going to happen year 2 and year 3. So that information will be added later. And as Dr. Clark mentioned, or other, I'm not sure who mentioned, but this is a living, breathing document. I believe you did, Dr. Clark, in your report. So in the event that in the fall, there are some significant priority changes, we would take this document back if indeed significant revisions need to be made, and we would make sure our advisory groups had an opportunity to weigh in, as well as the Board of Trustees. So just a couple of things to highlight. This is our traditional dashboard. And on the very top, those are fall 2020 percentages, such as our socioeconomically disadvantaged number, our emerging bilingual students percentage, and then the dashboard underneath, which really looks like kind of a car dashboard, which is why I believe they named it that. You have our typical chronic absenteeism, suspension rates, which does connect to those state priorities of pupil engagement and the conditions to learning. The 2019 is the most recent for all of those because of the situation that occurred with the pandemic. And what the state is going to do with regard to the dashboard moving into the future still kind of remains to be seen. There's certain bits and pieces they feel like they can report out very accurately for districts, but there's many scales there that cannot be based on the situation that we are currently in. In addition to the state metrics, you have a couple areas that we as a district have to report out individually, and these are called local indicator. These are called the local indicator data sets. So the different areas are basic conditions, which again, teacher misassignments, vacancies, facilities, and all of that. And really, we are in very, very good standing with our misassignments and our vacancies because we have very, very, very little, which is great news. Within our facilities, we only have 4 sites out of all of our sites in the district that rated themselves under a good. And really that next level is like a satisfactory. So we're always wanting to have 100% in the good category, but that information has been shared with maintenance and operations, and there's been work orders submitted. So we have no doubt that that will improve over time. Standards alignment is certainly an area that is in progress, and the SIR report provides a lot of information about our next steps, such as expanding our work with the scope and sequence, taking a look at our adopted materials or a lack thereof. We do have an urgent need for an infusion of more curriculum and instructional resources that represent diverse cultural experiences, as well as really mirror our full community. Within parent and family engagement, we do have, and we have initial implementation in a lot of those areas. How are we really engaging students on a multitude of levels? I'd like to highlight our board member, our exiting board member, Trustee Alas, and her work with the Student Advisory Committee. And that is an area that within the engagement category is something that is definitely moving us forward in that area. Climate surveys, it's really how do we assess the climate of our system? And the California Healthy Kids Survey is something that's traditionally given. Again, we kind of skipped a year because of the whole situation. We are on track for doing it this year. But last count, about 70% of our elementary and 58% of our secondary students agreed with the statement. I feel like I am part of this school. And so there's certain very clear questions within that survey that we're going to continue to highlight on and drill in on in order to make sure that we're connecting to build relationships with students and families. The attendance rate is one of the local indicators that we will be taking a look at in chronic absenteeism when it comes to the climate survey. So as we get into the new document, we're really still continuing to focus on 3 overarching broad goals. And what you're going to be noticing as you look at the document, again, this is the new 3-year section of the plan. We're put in language there that helps to correlate it to our extended learning plan. So we're trying again to kind of integrate all of these different plans in such a way so there is some coherence, some alignment, and so it makes sense. As we develop our SACE plan looking into the fall, we will be doing the same thing. So you will not see something focused in one area that's not referenced in the other, if indeed that information is still is repeated in such a way. So without reading all of the information on this slide, our first bold goal is really focusing on a high quality education in a safe and welcoming environment, and really making sure we've got equitable and high expectations for our students. Making sure, of course, they have the technology, which is an excellent connection to our presentations tonight, that are aligned with state standards. And on the action services, again, without reading, we're really, the entire list, we're focusing on learning acceleration, which is really taking a look at our students as they're coming back to us. They're not broken. The learning loss phrase is not something we want to lose. It's unfinished learning. So really being very quick to identify what grade level standards the students need to have access, diagnosing unfinished learning that's occurred, and then immediately putting into play just-in-time scaffolds and support. So really that first goal is really focused around that, as well as how are we supporting social emotional learning, making sure we have the materials that we need, strengthening and integrating all of the supports for our different student groups, continued support with our specialty programs, such as our IB program, our dual language, CTE, focusing on our little ones for preschool and early literacy, and then again, connecting it to those important instructional technology materials and resources. The second goal is really making sure that we've got a very diverse, high quality group of employees in our system, because we all have one job, and that's really to make sure that we're supporting the students and the families of Mount Diablo. So making sure we've got proper training and learning acceleration, as well as short cycles of improvement. What is the return on investment when we spend a bunch of time and energy on a particular strategy or resource? It's really, it continues to kind of baffle, I know that the public sometimes when, they ask the question, well, what does it mean, for students, how is it working? And we're sometimes at a loss with that. So we really do need to go back and take a very close look at how we're collecting the data. Instructional leadership teams at our school sites, our teachers are experts in how to provide that instruction, but they can't do it alone. So how do we have teams of teachers as well as staff members, our counselors, our assistants, and everyone working together as a collaborative group to ensure our instruction is high quality? Restorative practices as well as policies, making sure we're taking a look at that, but most importantly, that our staff is really internalizing what we need to do to continue to build relationships. And the last bullet there is really focusing on the recruitment of diverse and equality workforce. We need our students to really see themselves in our faculty and our staff members in a variety of roles on our campuses and across our system. So how do we do a better job of that? And lastly, parents, families, and community members will be informed and engaged and empowered as partners. And honestly, I'm just so proud of the work that's been done in Mount Diablo in this area. Still quite a bit of work to do, but I do feel like there's been a bit of a shift in this goal. We're very excited that the board is going to be working with Dr. Clark and developing revisiting visions as well as board goals in order to make sure that everything is super aligned. That we're going to continue to try to build a schedule by which metrics are going to be provided to the board so we can really take a look at that as a collaborative community to determine the return on investment and monitoring success. More engagement for opportunities for linguistically diverse communities to really engage in and be empowered within all processes across our district. And thank you so much for being here to provide a simultaneous translation this evening. And actively recruiting parents, especially from underrepresented communities in our district, which we know they've got quite a bit to say. They've got great ideas, and we need to do a better job of bringing them in and welcoming them in a variety of ways. So that's an area that, even though, again, I feel like we've shown growth, it's an area we can do a lot in order to really welcome our families and our community. So all that being said, The LCAP timeline is one where this has actually almost been a 9 months type of experience. It's one where the draft is available, not only as a board item, but also on our website, and I'll show everybody how to access it. So right now, we're, in addition to the public hearing, we're also collecting feedback through the website, as well as having documents at the district office themselves where comments can be left. There's a board meeting today, as well as a public hearing on June 9th for information. The document will be brought back the 23rd for approval. But again, that is approval at that point in time, but it can always be brought back as revisions need to be made. It is due to the County Office of Education by June 30th. So if the public would like to take a look at the document, and I did a little, originally, all of these tabs within the parents and community were in alphabetical order. However, what I found as I was leaving the office today is, for some reason, the LCAP actually dropped to the bottom. So it may not be fully in alphabetical order. So full disclosure, you may want to look at the very bottom in the event that you're really wanting to take a look at the documents themselves and provide feedback. There is an opportunity to do this between now and June 14th, because what needs to happen is, as we receive feedback and questions, we are required to respond in writing. And so that does take a little bit of time to make sure that is posted. And again, I'd just like to remind everyone that on the front cover of the document is, again, a table of contents in case there's a particular section you'd like to look at. But we would really, again, want to appreciate everybody's collaboration on this document and their input. And trustees, we're here to answer any questions or to collect any feedback you may have on the document itself.
I think we'll do the public hearing first and then we'll weigh in. So the public hearing is now open on the LCAP. Seeing nobody to speak on it. Now, if the board has any questions, I would be curious, because you talked about the community's having a lot to say. Can you give us like a highlight of one or two things that you heard that you were able to incorporate from the communities this year?
That's a great question. So within the LCAP itself, there's actually a great section which does talk about stakeholders. And within that section, it very specifically speaks to our official advisory groups. So our district English language advisory group, our community advisory group. And a lot of the conversation really was focused around social emotional learning and support for kids. The learning loss or the unfinished learning, absolutely a huge concern, but making sure the hearts and the spirit of our students came through, loud and clear. So things such as making sure that we were taking a look at additional counselor support was a big thing, as well as making sure that it was also a family affair, that it's not just the student coming back, but there's also situations where how do we provide more resources and supports, and as well as some education and training for some of our families as we look into the fall, especially around, let's say, technology and things such as that, or also how do they support their students that are still dealing with, in some events, quite a bit of trauma. They were also very interested, many of the groups, in outside the classroom walls activities, field trips, outdoor lab spaces, or, science in the garden was one thing that was mentioned. A few of the representatives had students at schools with those types of programs. So not just thinking about that one teacher in that classroom doing that, instruction, but opening up the door, opening up the walls, opening it up in such a way where it was more of a holistic approach to supporting students.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Questions from board? Sharon?
Instead of a question, I just have a quick compliment. I think that the way that we talk about students and the way that we talk about people really matters deeply. And so I really appreciated your comments on calling students emerging bilingual students. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Anybody else? Trustee Azali?
Okay, can you hear me from here?
You did.
Good, okay. I echo Trustee McFerrin on specifically the emerging bilingual students, but also just, I personally like these plans that you have to put together in your work for whatever reason that are big and prescribed, like that just sucks. That's my personal opinion, but having a plan is very important. And so I really appreciate all of the thoughtfulness that clearly went into this. And and to your point of that, it's reflecting all of the different plans that will eventually be done. I think the last one is by September. I liked reading and recognizing the SIR report. I'm like, oh, I've read this before. And so that made it very easy to read and understand, and especially having participated in the feedback sessions for that report. And so it felt good to see those things reflected back to me in that. I have a little bit of feedback, which I'm happy to also put in writing on. Oh, this is one that I brought up from the SIR. So Black student unions. Yes, I'm such a pro advocate of expanding Black student unions, either through our high schools and even into our middle schools. But one thing that I would hope, because what I feel like is valuable about a Black student union, besides for students to be able to come together in community, but is to also have an adult who is Black. And so maybe to specify that the advisor, I know that's not the case everywhere. There's not necessarily a Black faculty member, staff member on every campus, but that our goal would be that those groups would be advised by a Black person, adult. I keep looking up there because that's where it was, but I also have it in front of me. But you also mentioned, you pointed out explicitly the need to recruit and retain more diverse teachers, and that it's important for students to see themselves reflected in teachers. And it says, it specifically says there's a need to recruit and retain more Latinx and African-American teachers to bring into closer balance the demographic percentages of teachers to students. And I would argue, or not argue, I would prefer that the ratio doesn't necessarily matter, especially when when Black students make up such a small part of our district. That means the teachers would make up a small part. And so there still wouldn't be, it would still be possible to go through a Mount Diablo education and never have a Black teacher, whether you're Black or not. And I think it's valuable for every student to have the opportunity to have a Black teacher, an Asian teacher, a Latinx teacher, and every other Heritage Month we will celebrate this year. I think there's value in that. And I am someone who went K through 12, I had one Black teacher my entire life. And then in college, I had two Black professors. And so it is important, but I think it's important for everyone to be exposed to everyone, because those teachers bring a different, no matter who they are, they're just going to bring a different lens to whatever subject they're teaching. It doesn't even matter the subject. It's just going to be a different and unique lens, and that everyone would benefit from. I've heard from Dr. Clark even, and I bet you, like Megan could attest that I hear our interview panels are huge. When people come and interview, but I wonder if it doesn't say that, this is what it is. Black Educators Association has expressed being part of those interview panels. And so if that can be laid out, or a mechanism for them, or if ever any other affinity groups emerge in our district, which I would encourage that to happen as well, that everyone is included.
And that's currently actually happening. And I really want to recognize their availability, because during the summer, many of the representatives, this is outside of their work year, but we've been partnering in order to make sure that we've got a very balanced representation on our interview panel. So thank you
That's good to hear.
for asking about that.
And I would, it doesn't go in an LCAP probably, but I would encourage other affinity groups to emerge in our district. That's the only one I'm aware of. And then the final thing I would bring up is that as people are planning for our new normal, are emerging from a pandemic, we're in written plans, not just the LCAP, but in written plans I've seen even in my daytime life, it's like we're ignoring that there was this pandemic behind us. And in this plan, we are very explicit in mentioning COVID and its impact on the previous plan or its impact on the things we had to shift or change or do or couldn't do. And I feel like we're selling ourselves short because there's so much we are doing and preparing, and that there's things we are doing that we have done this spring and that I bet we are going to continue to do to help ensure that our teachers, our staff, all the adults, and that our students are well supported having come out of this pandemic. And I don't mean academically, I mean emotionally. And I would love to see that called out in some way. It could be a goal that that we have professional development, or you take the example of the mental health webinars that went on for the last, well, almost this whole calendar year. If we are continuing things like that, that could be something that's in the LCAP, and that the measurement is what we did, not necessarily that everybody's happy, because that's not gonna happen. But I just want to make sure that that we're giving ourselves credit and that we are intentionally doing what's necessary to support our whole community in coming back from this mass trauma and acknowledging it and equipping ourselves to be able to handle whatever may come up at any given moment for a student or an adult, a staff member or a parent. That's it, sorry.
Thank you. Ms. Mayo?
I realized as I was reading the document and needed to refer back occasionally that I have to refresh those abbreviations in my mind. And now that we're adding tills and ilts, there's more to learn and remember and understand the role of. And I appreciate the development of them, because I think I do agree with the concept behind them and the importance in those particular roles. I did submit some questions earlier and I appreciated the responses. But one of the ones that I was interested in there was the comment that we are going to expand 2 additional sites for the after-school program. And I'm wondering if those sites have been selected yet, or are we still in the process of a determination for those?
I'm just trying to remember back because this is a connection to the Extended Learning Opportunities Grant Plan. We looked at the next 2 that were on the list. So as we take a look at our school sites that have different populations of student groups, the next one on the list, I believe, was Concord High, and then it was Concord High, and I'm looking to see if I need to phone a friend. I'll have to get you the
Your
elementary
friend
school.
left.
No, Megan has.
Not Westwood.
All right.
I will email Concord High. I'm sure about. I will get you the elementary school, but yes, we are in the midst of that. And that's where that extended learning grant, that funding would definitely be helping in order to support additional schools outside of what we would traditionally support utilizing ACEs or Title I.
Well, my mind went there and I apologize for just rambling. That provides the opportunity for evening meal for students. It provides so much, many more services for our students that can be engaged in those programs. And so I am excited and pleased about that. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the very comprehensive presentation. And something that caught my ear when you were talking was how you referred to not learning loss, but unfinished learning. And first of all, thank you for that. I've gone to many webinars that the State Department has hosted regarding addressing that after the pandemic. So I love the rebranding of that term. And then furthermore, I was wondering whether this whole concept of students taking a gap in their learning is something that is addressed in the past in planning in terms of the summer. So whether this unfinished learning / learning loss that students experience from being away from the classroom for a prolonged period of time is something that is this plan is mimicking some sort of existing plan that is implemented after the summer. I was just curious if
So right now for the main focus around summer, close to 7,000 students that are enrolled, of course, at the high school, really focused on credit recovery or grade improvement. And then really all the other grades is trying to get the students as well as the adults in through the door and supporting that holistic view of the student. You know, the academics as well as the just engaging in social emotional activities as well as enrichment. As we look to the fall, there's already been quite a bit of work done through CCEE and also through the teachers network, otherwise known as TNTP, and actually a contract is going to be coming forward at our next board meeting where they are going to be supporting the team as we move forward and also our site leaders in taking a look at what accelerated learning looks like. And really what I'm getting to is because in the fall, as we're looking at our students and our scope and sequence and what we want them to learn, it is a grade level standard. However, we do need to take a look at some on-ramps to that and some prerequisites of possibly to address unfinished learning so they can accelerate in order to get to that standards mastery. No one thinks that we should be going back in history and redoing an entire year of education for all of our students. That is not what best practice is. But there's also a concern that unless we provide some supports and just-in-time supports, that our students will not be able to fully access the grade level curriculum that they are going into. So what we're looking at are a variety of different resources where we take a look at the grade level standard and what are those prerequisite skills right underneath. So as let's say introductory lesson, attend a 15-minute mini lesson prior to starting into that grade level standard, making sure that we do a very quick diagnostic, a formative, in order to see, okay, do the students have that prerequisite learning? And if not, here's the group that's going to continue to move forward. And here's the group we might need to be doing a quick reteach with, but we're not talking weeks and weeks and weeks of remediation. So that is the plan for the fall and it's coming to fruition now. And again, I really want to recognize CCEE and the TNTP team that's going to be helping us build our own capacity as well as that of our site leaders and our teacher teams on site.
Great, thank you for that. It's great to know that there are proven practices in place for measuring student success. So, and then my second point and question was I was looking at the document and looking at all the references to culturally responsive classrooms and restorative justice practices, and I was curious as to whether there is an existing practice in place to gather data of students of color who face either disciplinary probations or are suspended from school or potentially expelled from the district, and whether that contributes to targeted efforts to make sure that students of color are not disproportionately disciplined when not needed to be.
Well, unfortunately, the data would show that they are disproportionately disciplined.
Right.
And so that data is something that is regularly pulled. Now, pulling the data, analyzing the data, planning based on the data, and really changing practices, changing policies, changing hearts and minds around how to support students. That's where we're making a turn. And I want to highlight the work of directors of the elementary and the secondary team, RG Callback and Samantha Allen, that is helping to lead the work along with Assistant Director Jorge Melgosa. Where just this next week, we're having actually several days of workshops in order to really be focusing on explicit and implicit bias, our own, and then working our way out to, okay, how are we going to lead these conversations with our staff in order to really take a look at the practices as well as the data on the practice on our campus, which is leading us to getting the data that we're currently looking at, which does show that there's a disproportionate impact of discipline on students of color. So long answer to your question. Yes, this is a major focus as we open up the school year. And again, it's all around that social emotional learning, regardless of the student that's sitting in front, regardless of what they're going through, as well as that accelerated learning area.
Right, perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I also appreciate one of the trustees who mentioned the need to recruit more teachers of color, because being taught by a teacher that looks like you is just exponentially better for a student's learning. So thank you so much, Ms. Sachs.
In closing, I haven't finished reading it. If I have any comments, I'll send them to you. And this isn't a question as much as a statement. And you know, this is every year when we look at this, I look at the supplemental funds. And I really want us to start being more targeted in using those supplemental funds to help the groups they're intended to help, keeping in mind, we keep saying that equity doesn't mean equal. I think this is a perfect example. I think there's a tendency to want to share and share alike all throughout the district, but those funds are there to help the kids that need it the most. And I really want to see us moving, and I haven't read it all yet. Maybe I'll see it by the end, moving, and not only supplemental, but Title I funds to help those kids that need us the most, because we're only as good as the one that needs us the most. We help those, we help everybody.
And you know, so trustee Mason, if you take a look at page 105, there's a budget chart. And what it does is it really calls out those activities that are supposed to be contributing to the supports of students that are identified as being underserved. So that might be a place that would help highlight those
Very good.
activities.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that concludes that public hearing. Going right on to the next one. Public hearing on the preliminary draft budget. Do you want to make your public comment first, or do you want to wait?
He thought might not make it.
He might not if we wait till after the report.
Okay. This is the area that I've been with budget stuff. And I know one of the things about the budget in this district is that it's pretty garbage. And there are buckets and sub buckets and sub buckets, and that can get to be intimidating. But I grew up watching my mother balance the checkbook every month, and I worked at the bank teller for 3 years while I was finishing up college. So, the whole idea of however much money you have, you got to account for all of it and keep everything in the right place and know how much you have and where it goes. I like to monitor that. And I know that during my experience as the teachers union president, I will tell you one of the comments that the financial person at that school made that has stuck with me is when people ask me about next year, and he's like, you know what? You can't even guarantee next year. So I'm like, I don't care about next year. You give me numbers and I look at them, and what I really should be looking at is what were the numbers you gave me last time? And have they changed, or have they stayed, have they tracked favorably? So I'm really here to tell you that I have gone back and made a spreadsheet that side by side compares the last 6 years of all of our budgets. And if you want it so that you could see, not like, oh, what was last year's number? Let me go find that document. It's in the column right next to it. So you can see whether a value for a particular code is, oh yeah, that's pretty much tracked the same. Or if, oh, that really spiked, and then it went down, and then it went up again. And so there is the annual, I don't want to call it fluctuation, but annual trend, but there is also within a year fluctuations that happen. And I know that I think some of these fluctuations have been pointed out to you that, they happen. Why they happen, I don't know, but I don't see lots of questions that are asked about that. And being a teacher and saying, my union is going to ask, we'd like to increase our pay if possible. That negotiation comes down to money, and the easiest back and forth is we don't have money. Well, yeah, I think you do, but here's the numbers. But if I will have more to say of this at future meetings, but if you would like this document so you could see some of these side-by-side comparisons, you can just let me know and I will be happy to email it to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Are your numbers the audited numbers or the fiscal year-end audit numbers?
I've used the unaudited
Okay.
because it has the complete intimidating form, and that's the one that I've used. So it has all the little sub buckets that are in there. So those are the ones that I've gone off of.
Great.
All
So
right.
thank you. So I want to introduce.
I was just going to say, we're going
yeah.
to start with the presentation
Yeah.
and then we'll do public hearing.
Yeah,
again.
great. So Dr. Gonzalez and Mika Arbelbide, it definitely helps me when I can look at her to remember her name. But anyway, there's been a lot of work that has gone into this. And again, this is next year's budget. It's a proposed budget. And you'll notice within here, we have a couple different scenarios. So again, I'm going to turn it over to our team to present this next item. Thank
Just before you start, Dr. Gonzalez, just so we know this going in, we don't really even know the May, it's not done yet, right? The May revised, they're still fighting. Okay.
As a matter of fact, I have some notes before we even get started, and that was one of them. I know that somebody earlier said that a lot of this is a moving target. It's absolutely a moving target. As a matter of fact, while this meeting was going on, the Cal STRS rate, the STRS rate for next year was just established and we just got a memo. So it's a little crazy. So what I want to make sure that the public and the board certainly understands is it's a moving target and it is built on assumptions and metrics that will continue to change. And the biggest challenge for us is we're going to do a proposed budget hearing tonight. We bring forward a proposed budget in 2 weeks at the next board meeting. And then after that, the state can very well change any metrics that it wants. And then we just keep changing our numbers. So it's very reactionary and it is opposite of anything that generally in accounting practices would make sense, but that's what we have. So with that said, this evening, we are going to be sharing with you the information regarding the proposed budget. Mario, thank you for slide 1. I really appreciated that it started on the end, but we won't go all the way through. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, I have a. Do you want to do that? I'm not used to clickers. Okay, so this is the budget timeline for this year, and thank you very much, Board Member Mayo, for pointing out that we had a typo on the one that we put online. So right now, we are starting the cycle for the upcoming fiscal year. So this is our proposed budget. In 2 weeks, we will have the budget adoption. And then our typical stance is September, we do unaudited actuals. And that's when we have an opportunity to sit there and look back as to what really happened over the course of the last year, because we're going to spend money all the way through until June 30th. And then we wait for everything to be reconciled. And that takes a number of months. In December, we get our first check-in, which is our first interim. In January, we listen to what the governor says about what he's expecting for the next 3 years. We take a look at preliminary enrollment projections. In February, we start working with staffing and budget assumptions, actually a little late January, beginning February. In March, we do our second snapshot. Again, it's 1 day in time. That's our second interim. We have the governor's May revise that comes up in May, at which point he revises what he says back in January, and then the rest of the sausage making continues until the state adopts its budget, but we're required to do ours in June. So moving on. Okay. So the next slide that we have here, I want to put an arrow on, you see the red arrow that's going to the estimated COLA. And so what we're hearing right now that was in the governor's May revise is 5.07%. And the way that we take a look at interim reports and we do budget development, what we use is we use the most recent school services dartboard. And all the districts in the state use this same exact dartboard. So we just took a screenshot and put it up here. It's going to change. And as a matter of fact, if you start listening to any of the talk that's coming out of Sacramento right now, what the legislators are saying is they're coming up with a different proposal than what the governor has. And in theirs, they don't want the super COLA. They want only 4.07%. So we stick to this. We keep our blinders on, although we stress out on the side, we keep our blinders on and we only go by these numbers, which means if 5.07% is not what we've used, or it's what we use and then it changes, we'll have to go back and change all of our numbers again. So that's one of the things that I wanted to point out. And then really what happens is we take a look at all the expected students enrolled per grade level. Each student has a certain number that's attributed to their attendance, provided they are in school every single day. That's what you see here on this chart. In the next slide here, we have the rest of some of the numbers that we get for budget development, again, from the second half of the dartboard. And what you see here is the California CPI, the Consumer Price Index. This is basically the expectation for what's happening with the cost of goods. And so we have to factor that in. You'll see a jump there in 21-22. And so we do factor that in. And then what you see down in the CalSTRS employee rate, I put a little, another arrow there. That 16.92% was confirmed. It was confirmed just a few hours ago. But then, what we start seeing in 22-23, as we've mentioned, is that a number of the different rates start going much higher. So we're hearing there may be buy downs. We're not entirely sure what's going to happen, but you see the jump there in the 22-23 school year and the out years. You also see a similar notable jump in CalPERS. That's the retirement system for anyone who is not part of state teachers' retirement. So it would be all the rest of our groups that are not required to have credentials, if you will. It's probably the easiest way to explain it. And then the other thing that is a moving target, again, right now, we're using the 1.23% for unemployment. I put out a video in hopes that we could have those in our community jump on board and really do some advocacy. I believe that advocacy is working because the legislature wants this number changed and they want it brought down. So we're optimistic there. So again, a number of things can change. We're using these for right now. What you see on the bottom is because we are a district that is between 1,001 and 30,000 students, we are required to have a 3% reserve. Real briefly on some of the assumptions that go with our budget. And again, our budget is our best estimate as to what we think is going to happen in the following year. We're using the COLA that we've been given again. And I want to point out for anybody that does the math, you see 4.07% out there and it says compounded. That's before the 1%. But if you take 1.7 and 2.31, it does not add up to 4.07. And I know that many people have pointed this out. So I just wanted to make it clear that when we get a COLA that basically is backdated for this current school year, it compounds. And so it gets a little bit bigger. So that's why if you look at it, the numbers don't add up. That's what that means. And so what we're doing again is we're expecting that we're going to get 1.7% for this current year paid next year. We would then get a 2.31% COLA for the upcoming school year, both on LCFF and the special education base. And then a COLA augmentation, again, is the mega or the super COLA that the governor has been talking about. And then for the next two following years, we see 2.48% and 3.11%. Step in column, we continue to use the number of 1.5%. We are continuing to look at that, but that is something that we're taking a look at. And then the CPI, when you take a look at what we had on 2 slides ago, and then you take a look at the 1.5%, it's about 4.5% a year that we expect all of our expenses to be going up. The enrollment calculation for this next year, what we do is we take a look at cohort survival, which means the students that we have one year, expecting them to come back the next year. We've done some adjustments for the fact that we do expect that some of the students that didn't come to school this year are going to come to school next year. I think Dr. Clark knows that earlier this spring, I came up with about 6 different scenarios. And I said, if this and this, if this and this, and we sort of got together and put minds together and said, okay, we're just going to assume this, because there is no right answer for what's going to happen with the impacts of the pandemic. But we are expecting that in the 22-23 school year, we will see a reduction of approximately 1,166 students, which means even though we have lost them along the way and we've been able to get some back, the hold harmless component means that in this current school year, we were not penalized. The upcoming school year, fiscal year, we are not penalized, but then all those losses hit that second year. So that's something to watch. Average daily attendance, we're just going to assume we're staying flat at 94.8%. But this is certainly an area where if we could make sure that we're getting more bodies into classrooms every single day, then the money that we get increases. So that's important to take a look at.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
The COLA, what does adult education receive, and are there other categoricals that are not receiving the same COLA?
And I am so glad that Mika is here because she may have those specifics offhand because I do not. Do you remember what's happening with adult ed? Are they getting the COLA? You want to turn yours on?
At this point, I believe we are not including the quota increase for the adult ed revenue.
Unduplicated pupil count. So we are expecting a tad bit of a drop next year, and then we are expecting that that is going to increase again. The reason for that is because we take a look at a 3-year average. What's going to be very important for us next year is we are going to go down the route again of the alternative income forms. We're going to do that in lieu of the free and reduced meals because it is a format that's going to benefit us next year. And so we're going to work really hard to make sure we can get as many of those as possible because the more forms we're able to get submitted, the numbers are the numbers. So families are either going to qualify or they're not. But we're going to work on a real strong messaging campaign to see if we can move the needle on this because it will benefit us for 3 years. Again, STRS and PERS increasing significantly in 22, 23, and then leveling off. So you got those numbers there that match the dartboard. We took a look at our health and our health benefit increases because part of the challenge is that those decisions on what those increases are going to be are not going to be made until later this month. And then they can be adjusted afterwards. So we're waiting to see what happens with that one, but we have adjusted our numbers. So what we're going to do is originally we were building out budgets at 10% every year. We've adjusted that down to 8% and then 5% in the 2 out years because we think that that may be a little more reasonable. If it turns out that the benefit increase is not that much, we're able to go back and we're able to change that. Our indirects are going up slightly. The reason our indirects are going up slightly, it's not that we get more money, but it means that there are probably positions that I never described this as well as I could. Indirect costs.
Well,
So the indirect cost rate is something we've had a number of conversations with the county office about. Go ahead.
So indirect cost is we charge to the categorical fund for services that is provided at district level, such as payroll, salary, or any district level expense by the all of us. And actually, the indirect cost rate is just going back to the normal level. This year, the indirect cost was just significantly low. We have never seen this low before. It's just going back to the regular level.
So that's like tonight we approved the BACR contract with CARES and they charge us an indirect cost for that contract. So that's where the fluctuation comes. One year they might charge us 1%, the next year it might be 2.5, whatever the state has approved, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, indirect cost.
So any
rate
contract we have where there's a reimbursement of money, they're going to charge us indirect.
on every expense, yes.
Again, unemployment on the bottom, unemployment insurance, we'll wait and see what happens with that one. So then what CSBA, the California School Boards Association, thank you. The Association of California School Administrators, and I know that Dennis Myers has presented to all of you. CASBO School Services, basically all the alphabet soups that really have anything to do with financial operations, have highly recommended that school districts always take a look at 2 different multi-year projections, what it looks like with the one-time funds and what it looks like without. And so what we're doing is we are remaining entirely consistent here. If we're putting the funds in, we're putting the expenses in that go with them. If we are not putting in the funds, we are not putting in the expenses. So that way it stays clean either way, but we really want to make sure that it's as transparent to the board as possible. So what we see here is all we are including right now is AB 86. Remember, two pieces of that, the in-person returning students back to school, and then the expanded learning component. So those two, as well as ESSER 2, are included. ESSER 3 is not included because fortunately or unfortunately, we now have to do a plan associated with that. We do not have a plan, so it makes absolutely no sense to just randomly put a bunch of expenses in budgets that may not be accurate.
Benefit, ESSER 3 is from the American Rescue Plan Act?
It is, so
Okay, just,
ESSER.
it doesn't matter what
Elementary and
ESSER stands for.
secondary
Just knowing the source.
emergent, school emergency relief.
Is it
Something like that.
is it CDE that's requiring a plan, or is it the federal Department of Education?
We are receiving the notice from CDE, but it's already coming from the federal.
And we're able to apply for it, and the form just came out yesterday. So we'll bring it back to the board in August. So what you'll see here in our multi-year projection is we're certainly in a much better place than we were even at second interim. And part of that right now is because we're able to see the impact of the one-time funds in here. We've also done a great deal of work, and kudos to the entire fiscal team and many of our chiefs and directors who have assisted with this to try to find as many allowable expenses that we were able to charge to the one-time funds that we have already received and already reported. So you'll see the difference between the multi-year projections with the one-time funds and without the one-time funds. I'll just jump to the without the one-time funds and the related expenses real quickly. What we continue to see is we have a much healthier ending fund balance. We are able to cover our reserve for economic uncertainty. But what we are also seeing is if you look at the ending fund balance, that would be the box right below F, ending fund balance. And if you take a look at each of the three groups and you take a look at the combined amounts, what you're seeing is that it goes from 54 million in 21-22 to 37 million in 22-23 and to 23 million in 23-24. And the reason that we want to take a look at that is because of what it does continue to show is that year after year, we're continuing to spend more than we are taking in. And whether we like the term or not, it is still considered a structural deficit. A structural deficit means year after year, you're continuing to do that. So what we're going to be working on over the course of the next year with the board is making sure that we're certainly spending this year's money on this year's students as much as possible, but making sure that we're right-sizing our spending across the board. Future risks and considerations. Again, a great deal of uncertainty with future state budgets. The LAO is otherwise known as the Legislative Analyst's Office. It is a nonpartisan team that is up at the state level. And what they do is they really look at it from a numbers only, as much as possible, objective perspective. They're warning about 22-23 school year and beyond. And so, at least over the next 6 to 9 months, the indicators we'll see will better inform that. We do continue to have a structural deficit in our multi-year projections. So working on a reduction plan will be important moving forward. Another round of ESSER funds. Again, these are one-time. These are one-time funds with very, very specific purposes. And I know I've been talking to a number of community members about this, that, every one of those comes with strings attached. It's not just, free money to be spending however we want. We have uncertainty around our enrollment. We're all going to be comparing district to district, trying to figure out what's going to happen with our students in the fall and how many we expect back. Our ADA hold harmless. It ends after this upcoming school year, which means that there will be a cliff meaning that instead of the gradual reduction and the adjustment of our revenues, it's going to go across and we're going to see 2 years in 1 year. Again, all the one-time funding is restricted. We continue to see cost increases with the pension and other operating costs. So we really need to be mindful of all of that. So happy to answer any questions that the board may have, whether we're able to do those now or we're able to get information and bring it back. I also do want to point out that the budget that has been provided is a reflection of all of the directors and all of the chiefs in every single department across the district, taking a look very closely at their prior spending, at what they're anticipating for this upcoming year. We do know that there have been a couple of revisions that have come in over the last 24 hours, and so we will need to make some changes to our proposed budget, and then likely with the LCAP as well. So some minor tweaks there, but enough to really be notable to require some revisions.
So on here where you're referring to another round of ESSER, is that the American Rescue Funds that are coming from the feds? Because I've only heard it called the ARP, not ESSER.
No. So ESSER is the Elementary and Secondary Schools Emergency Relief.
So
it is entirely different than anything else the feds may be talking about. And until we start getting briefings that say, well, this is what's going to happen and this is how much money, we don't talk about any of that. ESSER we know about. And ESSER 1 was originally proposed and enacted in, I think, April of last year. ESSER 2 was the one that was done toward the end of December. ESSER 3 was done with the new administration in DC, and that was in about February or March, I think. And so anything beyond that would never be part of these budgets because we've not heard anything. It still seems to be a lot of talk at the federal level.
Well, it was the one that was done under President Biden is the one I'm referring to, because that's the one that, yes, it's restricted, but we can use a lot of that money to do things we were going to do anyway that fall under it, like windows and HVAC, which then helps us because now we don't have to spend it out of our other funds. That's one comment.
Correct.
And I just want to make it clear, and I'm not against giving increases by any means, but I hear this a lot in the community that, teachers have had zero increase in several years. They do get a step and column increase every year unless they've been here 20 something years and they've tapped out. They get that 1.5%. They haven't had another raise to their base. So I just want to get that out there. It's not like they're making the same dollar amount now that they were making 5 years ago. And then the other, it's just unknown to me is why the governor would be coming after us for unemployment when he said we couldn't lay anybody off, which we were happy to not do. We were happy to keep them working, but our people weren't then contributing to the deficit on the unemployment. So that one I don't get. And I understand this gentleman's confusion. Believe me, it's like they were only $54 billion off last year on what they told us. And that's kind of what we have to work with. We get numbers, we do our best, and then fate intervenes and we don't know. So it's real, I call it fiction because it's never really real until the bills come due. But I appreciate, it's got to be stressful because it's a moving target.
Thank you.
And I just want to state just real quickly that Trustee Cowan has submitted some questions that I went ahead and forwarded to Ms. Sachs and
Great.
to Dr. Gonzalez.
I have a question, one you already answered, and that was, because there was no federal dollars. In one of the columns in one of the pages, there was no federal dollars for I don't know what page, but I'm pretty sure that it's because they don't exist yet, because it would be ESERS 3. My other question is, is on page 19, and I would just, maybe my fellow trustees can remind me, there's like textbook adoption, 20 million. It's page 19. The box is F and then 2D. Textbook adoption is 20 million for this year. And was that something that we spent? Well, or did we stay, like, I was just confused, because then there's no textbook adoption for 21-22.
So 20 million you're talking about is probably in the assignment in the 2021?
Yeah.
Yes, that is for the future years. We put it in assignment, and in 21-22, according to the plan, we budgeted for 10 million.
Or wait. Sorry. So for 20 million, I mean, for this year, this current year, it was budgeted for 20 million.
For this year, we
Yeah.
put it in the assignment, 20 million. We didn't budget for it, but we set aside so that we can budget for it in the future.
So the 20 million exists, it's set aside, and in the future, we can spend it. Okay, thank you.
You provided some of the answers to me regarding these questions, but I still think that they're important. I noticed that the insurance had declined by 29%. And I was asked what premiums were reduced or dropped. And I believe you indicated that all of the information wasn't available. Is that the short answer? And you're hoping that we'll have the information by the budget adoption?
Correct. As a matter of fact, we received that information today.
Of course, naturally.
So, they're predominantly all going up. And then the legal budget is going up for next year as well.
Okay. And there was the equipment replacement, which increased 430%. And the response was that we need to look at 40 vehicles which are reaching their end of life with notable ongoing mechanical issues. So that's, I appreciate that information, because the information is just a number until there's some context behind it. And most of those vehicles were purchased in 1980. So as long before some of us were around. No. I was pleased to see that where bus leases have been paid off. So even though that's a minor amount, it is something that's important. And noteworthy that the November 21 election recall expense is included in the budget. So if that doesn't happen this fiscal year, then that will be funds that can be used elsewhere in our budget. I did have some concerns about the decline in adult education, but that's due to the sources at the state and federal levels primarily, because I value that program and believe that it provides a lot of service to our community and our families as the adults advance their education and their certificates. I don't know how often we run into members in our community that got their certificates to be a dental hygienist or a phlebotomist at a doctor's office that went through our programs in Mount Diablo adult education. So that was important. One of the questions I had was in regards to and I'll have to see if I can find it quickly. The expense that the indirect expense going from 1.47 to 3.76. And if I understood correctly, you're saying it's returning to a pre-existing level. do we always have to charge the 3.76 expense?
Usually when we receive the restricted
I
fund,
can't quite hear you, I'm sorry.
when we receive the restricted fund, federal and state tell us which program we can charge the indirect cost and which we cannot.
Okay. All right, so there may be instances that doesn't apply to
Correct.
every,
Correct, not every program we charge indirect cost.
and the one thing I was questioning for food services, there was an indication that, now I have to find it, that some of the, for their rental expenses and their, what was the other one? Building and improvements, that those won't be calculated until the books are closed. It's on page 60 and page 61. Because it reduced, there was a 100% reduction for the rental expenditures and 100% reduction for the building and improvements. And that's why I questioned it.
So we can get back to you on that one.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
So reading the comment, it looks like these expenditure will be paid using carryovers. So once we close the book 2021 and post the carryover, then they will be budgeting these categories using the carryover money.
Okay.
Public hearing. Now we are on to 8.4, review and potential approval of resolution 20/21-77, authorization to make year-end intra-budget transfers. Pretty standard. Have a question or a motion?
Madam President, I would move the board approve resolution 20/21-77, authorizing year-end intra-budget transfers.
Second?
Thank you. Trustee Law,
Yes.
trustee Mayo,
Yes.
trustee McFerrin,
Yes.
trustee Zaiwi,
Yes.
trustee Mason votes yes, that's 4-0 with concurrence.
We have Mr. Lepe here if there's any questions. He's been here all night, so maybe he wants to come and tell us something about these two buses. Yes.
We appreciate that.
Good evening, guys. You guys have any questions for me on it?
I did not. Any other question? Anybody have a question about?
And just so we're clear, the only reason that these are not going electric and we're not putting it in the BACMed grant is because they weigh under the required amount for a grant. If not, we would be getting them under the grant.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, I'll take a motion.
All right, I'll move that we approve the purchase of 2 new 2021 Microbird G5 Ford 200 school buses.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. Trustee Laws,
Yes.
trustee Mayo,
Yes.
trustee McFerrin,
Yes.
trustee Anzawi.
Yes.
Or student trustee. It's getting late. Okay, so if there is nothing else.
I will, we will have an unveiling as well as a press release for just so you know, an update on our electric fleet, the infrastructure is coming really soon. So before the start of next year, we'll be 100%.
Do we get to ride in that unveiling? I want to see if it's smooth.
So we already have, we had 5 of them working for hybrid, and we have 3 for ESY and summer school. Students love them, the drivers love them. At first, there was a little bit of hesitancy, but it's been a hit. So, thank you. Good night.